Chapter 1735. In front of Skyfall Mountain, the pressure was like a sea. Even from several hundred miles away, one could feel a suffocating pressure. All the cultivators that approached had no choice but to land ahead of time. This was the first round of screening. Skyfall Mountain had descended. That clan had released the spell, revealing it to the world. But only those that were fated could enter. The word fated could be understood to mean that one's cultivation had to reach a certain degree. When Chinyu was around 500 miles away, he landed. He looked up at Skyfall Mountain and then hurried forwards. Flying over wasn't difficult, but before he entered Skyfall Mountain, he didn't want to attract attention. He had to quietly seize that clan's lucky chance. After all, this matter was too important. If even the tiniest bit of it was leaked out, he would fall into a perilous situation. Rumble, 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 rumble. Above his head, rumbling sounds echoed out from time to time. Space violently shook, forming terrifying waves. One could faintly make out figures within. Countless eyes were drawn over, revealing envy and awe. For them to be able to fly through the air and resist the suppression of Skyfall Mountain was in itself a display of their powerful cultivations. But in truth, these cultivators weren't deliberately showing off, but were instead natural movements as they resisted the suppression of Skyfall Mountain. Although taking a step ahead didn't necessarily mean they would obtain any harvests, they at least had the initiative, and sometimes this initiative could determine who a lucky chance belonged to. Chinyu wasn't worried. When it came to Skyfall Mountain, no one understood it better than he did. When he opened his eyes and saw its true nature, he had already made the first move. In this aspect, no one could compare with him. So above his head, whether it was the cultivators with astonishing momentum or the cultivators rushing around him, none of them were on the same starting line as him. With a miserable scream, a middle-aged cultivator suddenly tumbled to the ground, blood gushing out of his nose and mouth as if he had suffered a heavy blow. He struggled to get up, but as soon as he moved, he spat out several more mouthfuls of blood and fell to the ground. "I don't accept this. I don't accept this." With a roar, this person was rapidly pulled away. One could only faintly hear his sorrowful cries. It was clear that this cultivator had already been screened out and eliminated. Chinyu glanced at him and continued on his way. He was the first cultivator to be eliminated, but he definitely wouldn't be the last. Everyone wanted heaven-shaking lucky chances, but that also depended on whether or not they had the qualifications to grasp them. If one wasn't strong enough, even if the fortuitous opportunity was right in front of them, they could only shrink back. A second person was eliminated, followed by a third and a fourth. The area around Chinyu suddenly became empty. He frowned slightly and glanced at the black shadow on his left. A glint of light flashed in the depths of his eyes. He knew this person. When he first came to the Central Desolate, he made an agreement with Yang Fanzhan. On the ferry to Doda Mountain, he had fought with others over their accommodations. There was no real conflict between the two of them. They merely exchanged a few glances before the other took the initiative to retreat. And this person was one of the three people who faced them, because he was able to incarnate as the heavens of his own small world. Chinyu's perception was extremely sharp. Although he had only seen this person for a brief moment, he still remembered their aura. But now he was a completely different person, and his aura was completely different. It was dark and gloomy, like layers of dark clouds in the gloomy sky that could erupt with thousands of lightning bolts at any moment. Very strong. Chinyu's mind stirred. He turned his eyes away and continued on his way. In the next moment, the black-clothed man turned his head and his eyes fell on him. A few breaths later, he retracted his gaze. What keen perception! It seemed that there were some problems with this person. But thinking about it, if he could change his appearance and come to Skyfall Mountain, there was no reason others couldn't. What sort of lucky chance was Skyfall Mountain? Since it was made public to the world, it was normal for there to be a mix of good and bad people. But looking at it from another angle, the more chaotic the situation was, the more advantageous it was for him. Now that everyone was trying to fish in muddy waters, it would depend on their own abilities. There were people in front of him. They were cultivators from that race. Chinyu didn't need to look. He could feel this even with his eyes closed. What reassured him was that this person clearly didn't sense anything wrong. He smiled and cupped his hands together. Congratulations to everyone for passing Skyfall Mountain's test and obtaining the qualifications to enter. Please sign this contract, and you will be allowed to enter and seek out the lucky chances of the Great Tao. Everyone, including Qin Yu, received a jade archive. They probed it with their divine sense and looked through the contents of the mark. There were no tricks hidden in the contract. That race had taken out Skyfall Mountain in order to protect themselves, so they wouldn't make a mistake in something like this. In summary, there was only one important point. No matter where a cultivator came from, if they could obtain the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain, they would automatically become worshipped by that race for 300 years. During this time, they would protect their race and not be disturbed by the outside world. This was the core key to protect themselves. Skyfall Mountain wasn't something that race took out for free. Whoever obtained a lucky chance of the Great Tao and reached the true sovereign realm would have to become their worshipped. And in a situation where that race already had a true sovereign, if they added another true sovereign to serve them, they would be able to suppress the world and ensure the stability of their race, temporarily stabilizing the situation. The person from that race smiled and said, "Everyone, rest assured that the contract in everyone's hands is the same. But I must remind you that this contract was personally drawn up by my race's true sovereign. Once you sign it, there is no possibility of reneging. If you cannot accept it, my race will not blame you. You may return the way you came." The black-clothed man was the first. He dripped a drop of blood onto the jade archive and signed the contract. The jade archive that absorbed the blood trembled and vanished. Following, it was the black-clothed man who had just been in front of them. The person from that race said, "This fellow Taoist has already entered Skyfall Mountain." With someone taking the lead, the others weren't willing to fall behind. Moreover, this contract wasn't too much of a problem. If one could become a true sovereign, what did it matter if they were worshipped for 300 years? Moreover, with the strength of that race, if they added in the strength of a true sovereign, it would be more than enough to stabilize the situation. There wouldn't be too much danger. The jade archives absorbed the blood. The person who signed the contract vanished from sight. Chini took a deep breath. He flicked his finger and watched as a drop of blood fell onto the jade archive, instantly fusing into it. His heart tightened at this moment. Unlike the others, the jade archive didn't immediately tremble. Rather, there was a brief pause, as if it were hesitating. Qin Yu was expressionless, but his body was tense. Luckily, he heard a humming sound in the next moment. The strength of teleportation covered him, and he vanished from sight. The person from that race frowned. But he had already been warned that there would be someone hidden when Skyfall Mountain opened, and there might be some abnormalities in the Jade Archive contract. But as long as they could smoothly sign the contract, they could be allowed to enter. This time, all that race wanted was a true sovereign realm exalted. As for the other party's background, that was actually secondary. Everything in front of him darkened. In the next moment, light bloomed and Qin Yu appeared in Skyfall Mountain. The moment his feet touched the ground, he understood what Little Meaty had said before. Skyfall Mountain itself was the Great Tao. In other words, he didn't need to perceive it, nor did he need to search for it. The Great Tao was beneath his feet. All that mattered was whether or not he could obtain the method and find the turning point to refine it. And in order to refine the Great Tao, one first had to clearly see it. Some people were filled with enthusiasm before they entered the mountain, but they didn't know that if they didn't see anything at first glance, they were doomed to have no fate with the Great Tao. Qin Yu was one such person. He originally had no fate with Skyfall Mountain, but because of Little Meaty's existence, he could see a dazzling golden light every time he opened his eyes. In his eyes, the entire Skyfall Mountain was like a great sun in the vault of heaven. Now that he was within it, he could clearly see strands of golden light interweaving beneath his feet. Looking more closely, these golden halos intertwined with each other, turning into chains. Layer after layer stacked together, forming a powerful seal. Although the Great Tao existed, its master had already perished, thus it had sealed itself here. If he wanted to obtain the Great Tao, He needed to unravel it. Qing took a deep breath. He slowly exhaled, a smile on his face. No matter how complicated or powerful a seal was, as long as he could see it clearly, he could slowly unravel it from the beginning. It was only a matter of time. Moreover, little Meaty was here. He always felt that she had more cards up her sleeves than just opening a back door for him. The moment that Qing Yu stepped into Skyfall Mountain, all changes quietly occurred. After the 6 people from the 13th floor entered Skyfall Mountain, they all split up. Li Ruhua suddenly stopped. She furrowed her eyebrows and looked around. She could see motes of golden light scattering around her. Her heartbeat began to accelerate. Although she had maintained a calm demeanor after obtaining a spot to enter Skyfall Mountain, it would be a lie to say that she didn't have any expectations in her heart. After all, what lay in front of her was a heaven-piercing great Tao. If she could obtain it, she could become a true sovereign. With a single leap, she could become the most formidable existence between the heavens and earth. And now, this great Tao was right in front of her. Chen Shanlu, Li Ruhua shouted. Mississippi, I want to go into seclusion here. Stand guard for me. Without further explanation, Li Ruhua sat down cross-legged, sensing the world with rapt attention. Chen Shanglu was startled. His eyes subconsciously widened and then filled with ecstasy. Right now, he shared both honor and disgrace with Li Ruhua. If she could obtain the great Tao, her status would naturally rise with him. There was even a chance that she could become an official disciple of the 13th floor. Neo Daodu's eyes widened. She blinked and blinked again. This wasn't an illusion. The world in front of her really was emitting golden light. And in her eyes, she could faintly make out a heaven-piercing great Tao. Ah! She cried out and clenched her fists. This great Tao is fated with me. She swept her eyes around. After not noticing anything wrong, Neo Daodu took out a flag and thrust it into the ground. The flag emitted a brilliant light that instantly covered her surroundings, hiding her figure within. Baiji followed behind them. She suddenly paused for a moment, but soon continued forwards, not the least bit of emotion on her face. Half a day later, she found a chance to separate from them. She stepped forwards and shot into the skies. Now, the Skyfall Mountain beneath her feet was emitting motes of golden light. Miao Yu's eyes widened, her face filled with disbelief. She had never hoped that she could obtain the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. But now, it seemed that this lucky chance had truly fallen into her lap. Long Mountain Region, Main City. Beneath the City Lord Mansion, 24 stone statues roared out together. The blood-red runes that covered their bodies emitted a rich blood-red light. The elder guarding this place widened his eyes. He revealed a look of shock that soon turned into ecstasy. Patriarch, Patriarch! He shouted out loud. Space trembled and a deep voice sounded out. I already know. The elder was excited. Patriarch, my clan's juniors have already formed a connection with the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. This great Tao must belong to my clan. I ask that you help buy time for my clan's juniors. We cannot allow others to reach it first. Chapter 1736. Qing Yu opened his eyes, his face filled with shock. He finally knew just what tricks Little Meaty had played in order to seize Skyfall Mountain's great Tao. He had originally thought that by closing his eyes and opening them again, he had already gained the upper hand when he saw the true nature of Mount Tianluo. He had never thought that Little Meat had been scheming for a long time. At this moment, Qing Yu could clearly sense that the connection between him and Skyfall Mountain was rapidly deepening. However, this had nothing to do with him. Instead, it was external forces that were helping to push the matter forward. It was as if he was sitting on a boat, and someone had jumped into the water and pushed him with all their might. Even without oars, the boat could still run very fast. That was because it wasn't just 1 or 2 people who had jumped into the water. In fact, Qing Yu could even faintly sense the positions and auras of these people. The first one was also the one with the clearest aura, Li Ruhua. This was beyond Qing Yu's expectations. It also made him even more certain that in the golden millet realm of Nank, when he no longer had any memories, something must have happened between the two of them. Second, Chinyu. Although he wasn't here, Chinyu was at Skyfall Mountain. He could clearly sense the aura of this great Tao. Instinctively, it helped Chinyu decipher and absorb them. There were still many left. For example, there were actually a total of 24 people from that clan. Right now, they were gathered together, trying to unseal the great Tao. Among them, there were several auras that Chinyu felt were familiar. 327, 418-8. He had no name or surname, only a code name. Back in the southwestern wasteland's shattered world, they had fought many times over the inheritance left behind by the sovereign. From this, it could be seen that even though that clan had handed over Heavenfall Mountain, they hadn't truly accepted their fate. They were still trying to go all out today. But if they knew that everything they were doing right now was to help Chinyu speed up the process of unsealing Skyfall Mountain, just what sort of mood would they have? In addition, there was Neo Didu, Baiji, Miaoya, as well as a sword cultivator. Their auras were swift and fierce to the extreme, and they gave off a strange feeling. But for some unknown reason, they were also pushing a boat in the water. Taking a deep breath, Chinyu smiled. He knew that from this moment on, the result was already decided. Skyfall Mountain's great Tao would be his. The death knell of that clan had already rung. Chinyu frowned, surprise in his eyes. He could clearly see that Skyfall Mountain's aura had instantly turned chaotic. It was like dropping a few drops of boiling oil into a pot of cold water. Although it was unable to stir the bottom of the pot, it caused the water surface to boil instantly. Rumble. At this moment, thunder rumbled in the sky above Mount Heavenfall, and the wind and clouds changed. Chinyu took a step forwards and flew into the air. The place where he was just standing suddenly collapsed as countless fissures appeared in the earth. Dense golden light immediately shot out from it and rushed into the sky, turning into a golden cloud. This was the aura of the great Tao. A sharp light flashed in Chinyu's eyes. He focused his senses and sensed the location of the 24 clansmen. He coldly sneered. Indeed, this matter was done by that clan. His goal was to interrupt the process of others comprehending their Tao and buy precious time for the 24 people of that clan in the Tianluo Mountain. Without a doubt, they had achieved their goal. Because of the sudden chaos, apart from Chinyu and the 24 members of that clan, the rest of the people who were comprehending the Tao were all affected. But what a pity, because of Chinyu's existence, that clan's painstaking efforts were doomed to be futile. That clan desperately tried to unravel their Tao, but in the end, they still managed to help Chinyu obtain this great Tao. He already began to look forward to when things finally came to an end. That clan had racked their brains, but in the end, all their efforts were for naught. What sort of expression would they have? He hoped that their hearts were strong enough so that they wouldn't suddenly die. Glancing at the cracks in the earth that were still spewing out golden light, Chinyu's figure flickered, and he quickly left. This golden light was only the aura of the great Tao itself. It wasn't worth mentioning at all. But this was only for Chinyu. When the other cultivators that entered Skyfall Mountain couldn't clearly see the great Tao, this golden light was enough to drive them crazy. As long as that clan guided them a little and connected this golden light to the great Tao, they could do so. And indeed, not long after Chinyu turned and left, a deep and low voice echoed out in the skies above Skyfall Mountain, containing endless majesty. Skyfall Mountain's great Tao vibrates on its own, releasing its Tao accumulation to choose its master. Once this phenomenon appears, the great Tao will surely emerge. Everyone, whoever can grasp this turning point and soar into the heavens, will have to rely on their own methods to compete. The one who can obtain the most Tao accumulation will become the master of the great Tao. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The voice was like thunder, echoing through the entire Skyfall Mountain. At this moment, countless cultivators on the mountain looked up, their eyes blazing hot. The golden light that spews out from the cracks in the earth is Tao accumulation. This phenomenon of the great Tao must have arisen because of me. Whoever dares to compete with me die. Outside a golden fog, over a dozen cultivators raced over. After hearing the voices warning in the skies, they began to slaughter without hesitation. Rumble, rumble, they attacked with all their strength. Powerful fluctuations of strength swept out, leaving one's mind shaking. This involved the ownership of the great Tao and the turning point to become a true sovereign, let alone friends and fellow disciples. Even father and son brothers might fall out with each other. Now, no one would hold back because the warning given by that clan was clear. The one who could seize the most Tao accumulation would obtain the approval of the great Tao and become its master. Then what was there to hesitate about? Kill. Everyone in front of him was a competitor. If he could kill them all, then the last one to survive would naturally become the new master of the great Tao. Qin Yu looked at them from afar, and then turned to leave without hesitation. That clan's plot had succeeded. By now, Skyfall Mountain had become a giant purgatory. He absolutely could not fall into it. But soon, Qin Yu discovered that he had underestimated the schemes of that clan. Their schemes were far more sinister and ruthless than he had imagined. This was because the golden fog that spewed out into the air, which was also the Tao accumulation that clan spoke of, wasn't completely motionless. It was like fog drifting in the wind. As it moved, it constantly approached Qin Yu. After changing directions several times, Qin Yu was able to confirm this point. His complexion turned dignified. He took the initiative to avoid it, not wanting to fall into the slaughter of the golden fog. But the Tao accumulation aura locked onto him and gathered from all directions. With more and more of them gathering, he would eventually be exposed. At that time, he would become the target of public criticism, facing the cultivators from all over who wanted to fight for the great Tao. Unless Mimi attacked, there was absolutely no way he could resist. And once Mimi attacked, that meant his identity would be exposed. At that time, the true sovereign of that clan would stop at nothing to kill him here. Qin Yu's complexion darkened. As he rapidly moved to avoid being discovered that he was attracting the Tao accumulation, his thoughts raced. Soon his eyes brightened. That clan didn't know his identity, so this plot wasn't just aimed at him. In other words, other people who could see the great Tao and were constantly unsealing also had the ability to passively attract the Tao accumulation. As for Qin Yu, as long as he could find one of these people, or even several of them, he could hide himself within and become unremarkable. Even if he were to be besieged in the end, he wouldn't need to bear the risk alone. Moreover, besides this, there was another thought in Qin Yu's mind. That clan, if 24 people gathered together and worked together to unravel the great Tao, just how many Tao accumulation would they be able to attract? If others were to see this scene, especially when everyone was forced to stop unraveling the great Tao because of the changes at Skyfall Mountain, and yet they were still continuing, humph, that scene would be wonderful. Qin Yu didn't mind adding pressure and trouble to that clan as much as he could. Having made up his mind, he stepped forward and his figure whistled away. Qin Yu's first target was Niu Daodu. Before, he thought that he would be implicated and fall into danger if he got close to her. But the current situation was already very dangerous. Walking together with Niu Daodu was actually a good choice, because even an idiot would know that Niu Daodu had a trump card that Niu Dingtian had given her. In addition, with her identity, no one would dare to attack her. At least she could buy some time. Perhaps by then, her unraveling would have been completed. Of course, Niu Daodu's special treatment of him was also an important reason why Qin Yu chose her. There was a high chance that she wouldn't be rejected. Ahem, doing this was a bit like trying to divert the trouble to someone else and finding a shield. But since she had saved his life, collecting some interest shouldn't be a big deal, right? At worst, he would give Niu Daodu more compensation in the future. Having found a way out, Qin Yu felt at ease. Skyfall Mountain was named after a mountain, and the outside world indeed saw it as a divine mountain that descended from the heavens. But in fact, after entering it, one would understand that it should be called Skyfall World. A mountain was a world. There were mountains and rivers, and there were native creatures. As the great Tao shook and spewed out its Tao, these native creatures went crazy. Niu Daodu frowned and looked annoyed. She was actually besieged by a swarm of mosquitoes. She didn't know if it was because they had absorbed the Tao, but these arm-sized mosquitoes were all golden, as if they were cast from gold. Their defense was extremely amazing. The flag that she had laid down was destroyed by the crack, so its power was greatly reduced. It couldn't resist the attack of these mosquitoes. Niu Daodu, it's her, Niu Dingtian's most beloved junior. The Long Mountain Territory's Shu family was exterminated overnight because of her. It is rumored that this woman has the qualifications to become a true emperor. She is feared by all sides. Low exclamations came from the surroundings. Many cultivators who had been attracted here looked dignified at this moment. But deep in their eyes, there was a burning desire. Because in addition to those terrifying mosquitoes that were crazily besieging Niu Daodu, there was also a large amount of Tao floating around her. As she breathed, the Tao was constantly merging into her body. The Tao is gathering by itself. Could it be that Niu Daodu is the cause of this change? Is she the cause of the great Tao shaking in Tianluo Mountain? That's very likely. She is indeed a woman with the qualifications to become a true emperor. Humph. Now is not the time to talk about this. Are you and I going to watch her take the great Tao? Everyone fell into silence. No one said anything, but their gradually heavy breathing and the coldness in their eyes had already made their attitude clear. The Niu family was indeed terrifying. Niu Dingtian was the current true emperor, known as the #1 rogue cultivator. But today in Tianluo Mountain, they were fighting for the great Tao of the true emperor. Anyone who got it could reach the sky in a single bound. Who would be willing to give it up to others? What was more, there was a saying that the law couldn't punish the masses. Today, if they wanted to besiege Niu Daodu, they would have to join hands. The Niu family was indeed terrifying. Niu Dingtian's method of slaughtering the Shu family was frightening. But how could the Niu clan become their enemy? Chapter 1737. Niu Daodu could feel the icy cold gazes from all around her. She naturally knew what these people were thinking. She nearly cried from anger. These people didn't have any other skills. Just look at others. They were the best at ganging up on her. Although she had already narrowly escaped death once, she hadn't been alone at that time. She had Qinyu and Ruru protecting her. So, even though she held the trump card given to her by the old ancestor and told her not to be afraid, Niu Daodu still couldn't help but panic. In her panic, she lost her composure and was nearly pierced through by a mosquito's proboscis. This scene caused the hearts of the surrounding people to calm down. Then, their gazes became even colder. Niu Daodu was only SOSO. Even though her talent was outstanding, she was still a delicate flower raised in a greenhouse. There was nothing to fear. Even if she held the trump card Niu Dingtian gave her, as long as they attacked, they might be able to kill her in a single move. Attack! With a loud roar, the dozen cultivators attacked without holding back. Because they had calculated that Niu Daodu would have a trump card she had obtained from Niu Dingtian to protect herself, they naturally wouldn't hold anything back. Every treasure erupted with radiant divine light. The rumbling sounds shook the heavens and earth, setting off raging waves. They had come to Skyfall Mountain to seize the great Tao's lucky chance. At such an important moment, anyone with some wealth would generously reward them with treasures. At the very least, they would give their disciples some time to use them. Therefore, when everyone attacked at this moment, it was truly a terrifying sight to behold. The first to suffer were the arm-length mosquitoes that surrounded Niu Daodu. Even though they shined with a golden light and had amazing defensive capabilities, they still couldn't withstand the combined attack of over a dozen powerful cultivators using their treasures. In an instant, they disintegrated into powder. They couldn't be more dead. Niu Daodu screamed out loud. She was still thinking about what she should say to scare away these malicious cultivators. She never imagined that before she could even speak, they would already attack. Seeing the raging waves howling towards her, about to swallow her up, Niu Daodu's body was suddenly covered in a layer of golden armor. Bang, bang, bang! Heaven-shaking explosions rang out one after another. The various treasures that smashed into her body shattered into pieces. This scene was like picking up an egg and smashing it against a millstone. Neo Dowdu was safe and sound, not moving an inch. The surrounding people who had brazenly attacked spat out mouthfuls of blood. Their widened eyes were filled with shock, anger, shock, grievance. All sorts of emotions intertwined. Golden armor of the Great Path. This meant that Neo Dingtian had put all his defense on Neo Dowdu. What could they, who hadn't even crossed the threshold of the celestial being, do? You can do this. You can actually do this. This is too much. He was filled with anger, but in the depths of his heart, he was filled with envy and jealousy. After all, not all true emperors in the world were willing and had the guts to turn their own defense into the Great Path golden armor and bestow it to their juniors. The weight of this was heavier than the heavens. But now, it was already too late to think about these things. Neo Dowdu had the golden Dao armor to protect her, so there was nothing they could do. Thinking about the treasure that had shattered his body earlier, he felt a sharp pain in his heart, and he spurted another mouthful of blood. Run, let's go. Do not provoke Neo Dowdu. Just a moment ago, she had teamed up with the crowd, but in the blink of an eye, she had fled in all directions. The scene in front of him made Qin Yu, who had been hiding in the dark and waiting for a chance to save her, twitch his mouth. Neo Dingtian was really a ruthless person. He could even make a legendary thing like the Great Path Golden Armor, and he really dared to give it to Neo Dowdu. Wasn't he afraid that the matter in Skyfall Mountain would be exposed, and someone would come to the Neo family and kill him while he was in a bad state? Qin Yu thought for a moment. Neo Dingtian probably wasn't afraid. Maybe he was waiting for someone to come to him. He raised his hand and rubbed his face. His head smiled bitterly. It seemed that the hero saving the damsel in distress was not going to work, so he had to get out of here quickly. If Neo Dingtian gave Neo Dowdu some detection treasure and she found out that he was hiding nearby, it would be really hard to explain. Swish, Qin Yu's figure moved, and he took the initiative to show himself. Neo Dowdu, who still had a lingering fear, subconsciously widened her eyes. When she saw that it was Qin Yu, her face suddenly relaxed. "Zhou Huan," she shouted with a sobbing tone and directly rushed towards him. Qin Yu was startled. He quickly stepped back and said loudly, "Miss Neo, they have run away. You are safe now." Neo Dowdu stopped. Qin Yu heaved a sigh of relief. If she had really rushed at him, the active defense of the Great Path Golden Armor would have been activated. Hiss, that would have been terrible. Just thinking about it made him feel pain all over his body. "Zhou Huan, all of them wanted to hurt me. I didn't do anything. Why are you so slow? I even helped you before." Qin Yu wryly smiled. "You were the one who stood there without moving, and yet you managed to roll over him. But now, it seemed as if you had suffered a great loss. As for why you are so slow, I know the reason, but I dare not tell you. Ahem. Miss Neo, we have made too much noise. Let's get out of here quickly. I will explain it to you on the way." Neo Dowdu nodded repeatedly. "Let's go, in case more bad guys come." It's a pity that Uncle Neo is not here. Otherwise, we won't have to be afraid. Qin Yu felt uncomfortable. With the Great Path Golden Armor, she was invincible under the true Emperor realm. What was there to be afraid of? On the way out, he observed the trajectory of the Dao accumulations as he explained them to Neo Dowdu. Of course, Qin Yu didn't point out that this was a plot of that clan. Otherwise, if Neo Dowdu asked how he knew, wouldn't that expose him? Moreover, regarding the Dao accumulations, he had made some changes and removed himself from it. Neo Dowdu was suddenly enlightened. In other words, it is because I perceive the great Dao of Skyfall Mountain that this phenomenon occurred, causing the Dao accumulations to spew out and gather towards me. Qin Yu earnestly nodded. According to what I know, that is indeed the case. Neo Dowdu, clench your fists. I knew that the old ancestor had me come to Skyfall Mountain for a reason. This great Dao is fated with me. She looked at Qin Yu and patted his shoulder. Don't be afraid. Once I obtain this great Dao, I will soon become a true emperor. At that time, no one will dare to bully us. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Miss Neo is right, but right now we should hide to avoid being besieged. After all, Although the great Tao golden armor is invincible in defense, I fear that someone will use some devious method to prevent you from obtaining the great Tao. Little Meaty's complexion changed. Then she rejoiced. Johuan, you are too smart. I'm lucky you reminded me. Otherwise, I might have been schemed against by others. She turned her hand, and a sphere appeared in her palm. This is the void bead that the old ancestor bestowed upon me. After opening it, it can temporarily evolve into a special small world that can hide within and isolate the aura of the outside world. Perhaps it can help us conceal ourselves. Old Nyo's family was truly rich. They even had this sort of treasure. Qin Yu's eyes brightened, and he nodded again and again. Nyo Daodu reached out a hand. With a light hum, the surface of the void bead lit up with runes, swimming about as if they were alive. They were extremely small, but if one looked carefully, each rune would be incomparably clear. There were so many of them that it was impossible to count. The small world was indeed very small. It only covered an area of 10 feet around the two of them. Qin Yu had already tried to mobilize the small world to conceal himself, but he had failed. This time, it was very good. The Tao accumulations that were gathering were now retreating. It was working. Nyo Daodu said, "How is it?" Qin Yu gave a thumbs up. "Very good, it's already working. Miss Nyo's actions are truly extraordinary." Nyo Daodu's smile bloomed like a flower. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He thought that it was lucky that such a naive girl was born in the Nyo family. Otherwise, she would have been harmed by others. Thinking about it again, he realized that he was using Nyo Daodu's naivete. Even with Qin Yu's formidable mental fortitude, he still couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed and ashamed. Indeed, but he was a good person with a conscience. He wasn't born to play tricks and schemes. "Zhou Huan, what should we do next? How about we find a place to hide?" Nyo Daodu gave her own suggestion. Qin Yu shook his head. "That won't do. Although the bead has temporarily concealed our aura, there might be some changes afterwards. Moreover, the Tao accumulations are related to the struggle of the great Tao, so how can we not use them? Miss Nyo, don't forget that this phenomenon was caused by them." Cough. Even though he felt guilty, he still had to do something. This was the vexing part of lying. After you said one, you had to use more lies to cover it up and make up for it. Of course, Qin Yu wouldn't give up because of this. When it came to his own safety, he wasn't pedantic to such a degree. In the future, he would just compensate her a bit more. Moreover, Skyfall Mountain's great Tao was destined to be his. Nyo Daodu absorbing a bit more of the great Tao's aura was her only harvest. It was better than returning empty-handed. Nyo Daodu nodded. "All right, we'll do as you say. Little girl, do you know how easy it is to deceive you? Where do we go?" "Here." Qin Yu lifted a hand and pointed. That clan's plot had succeeded. Besides their own people, everyone that had a connection to the great Tao had fallen into trouble. Besides Nyo Daodu, there was also Baiji and Miaoya. If he didn't help them, there would definitely be problems. What happened just now was the best evidence. Even Nyo Daodu and the others dared to touch them. The temptation of the true, sovereign great Tao had already caused everyone to go crazy. As for Li Ruhua, first, Qin Yu still didn't know what was going on between the two of them. Second, the 13th tower stood above the 4 sects and 4 families. There might not be anyone that dared to do anything to her. Moreover, the 13th tower had 12 people that entered Skyfall Mountain. Even if something happened, they should be able to protect themselves. So, he wouldn't worry about her for now. But if there was a chance, Qin Yu wanted to figure out just what had happened in Nank Golden Millet Mystic Realm. He always felt that Little Meaty knew something and was deliberately hiding it. On the other side, Li Ruhua grasped her immortal sword. Several corpses lay around her, and the air was thick with the smell of blood. Chen Shangle's face was pale. He was half kneeling on the ground, gasping for breath. The 13th tower was indeed a land of immortals. Their status was transcendent, even above that of the 4 sects and 4 families. But this wasn't enough to scare away the greed in everyone's hearts towards the true, sovereign great Tao. Blinded by greed, it was only natural that they would do things that they normally wouldn't dare to do. Thus, There was this scene on the battlefield where several people had died. But this wasn't the end. Li Ruhua could feel the covetous gazes coming from all around. Cold to hot. It was just that they were temporarily stunned by the deaths of those people just now and didn't act rashly. Chen Shangolf sent a message asking for help. Yes, miss. Whoosh, flames shot into the skies. Rumble, rumble. Beneath the skies, a giant hand suddenly appeared, trying to block the flames. But even though it was grasped, the flames vanished and then exploded in the skies. Bang! A massive lotus flower bloomed. It was crimson and dazzling to the extreme. From afar, it was like a red sun had suddenly appeared. Humph! After a cold snort, a deep voice resounded through the world. Everyone, the 13th Tower's lotus flower has already sent out a distress signal. Do you and I still want to wait? Shua, a figure appeared in midair. The 13th Tower is indeed incomparably powerful and isn't something that you and I can contend with. But this doesn't mean that we have to hand over our great Tao lucky chances. This person held his hands behind his back. His sword aura was nearly tangible, and his killing intent soared to the heavens. Kill the two of them and use a great supernatural ability to sever their aura. Even if the 13th Tower takes action, they won't be able to find us. If that's the case, then let's begin. Rumble, rumble. The skies began to seethe. Wild fluctuations of strength swept out in all directions like heaven-shaking waves. In an instant, Li Ruhua and Chen Shangolf were submerged within. Chapter 1738. Outside Tianluo Mountain, several blurry figures stood in the air. They were right here, yet there seemed to be 1,000 mountains and 10,000 rivers separating them, causing others to be unable to see them, much less sense them. It involved the struggle of the great Tao and whether or not there would be new members at the peak of the world. This was a major event that no one could ignore, even if they themselves were supreme existences that stood at the peak of the world. The silence was broken. One of them suddenly spoke up, his tone indifferent. Patriarch, there seems to be something wrong with the changes in Skyfall Mountain. Do you have an explanation? Humph. Can't you be more direct? As soon as he spoke, he knew that the shadow was Niu Dingtian. His tone wasn't friendly. Patriarch, I'm warning you. If anything happens to my precious granddaughter here, don't blame me for turning hostile. Shua. Space flickered and a phantom appeared out of thin air. It was the patriarch of the Skyfall Mountain tribe. He was a tall man, and his voice was calm. I have already given an explanation for the strange events that occurred in Skyfall Mountain. As for Patriarch Niu, if you don't want your granddaughter to take the risk, I will send her out now. Niu Dingtian sneered. How dare you? The clan leader said faintly. Of course I dare. His gaze swept across everyone present. Everyone, if you have any similar concerns, I will satisfy them all. No one spoke. Give up? Of course not. Today, something strange had happened to Heavenfall Mountain. Regardless of whether or not that clan had secretly done something, it was definitely related to the Great Tao. Perhaps the new master of Tianluo Mountain was about to appear. At this moment, even if they knew that the Skyfall Mountain range had become a purgatory, no one would give up. Patriarch Niu even gave his golden armor of the Great Tao to Niu Daodu. Do you really think something will happen to her? The clan leader suddenly stabbed him in the back. Mount Tianluo itself was a great path. Even though it was currently sealed, it was on the same level as everyone else present. As a result, they were unable to clearly see what was happening in the Skyfall Mountain range. Since that clan had been in control of the Skyfall Mountain for so long, they definitely had some trump cards. Everyone was well aware of this. Therefore, the credibility of his words was very high. The air suddenly became quiet. The true emperors who had reached the peak of the world fell into deep thought, and their auras suddenly changed. Vaguely, the situation of joining forces to suppress that race began to change. The birth of a true emperor was enough to shake up the entire Middle Wasteland. Therefore, they had gathered here so that they could be informed at the first possible moment and respond accordingly. For the same reason, the fall of a true sovereign could similarly set off a wild celebration that swept through the world. Countless benefits would be divided up and swallowed up. Neo Dingtian laughed. I can't help it. I love Lil P so much that I can't bear to see her get hurt. His laughter suddenly vanished. His phantom's eyes surged with a sharp light as he swept his gaze over everyone. His tone was calm as he said, "This old cow has a set of great Dao golden armor on Lil P's body. Right now, my condition is extremely weak. If anyone wants to kill this old man, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Do not miss it." No one spoke. The clan leader said calmly, "Old Ancestor Nyo's physique is strong, almost the best in the world. Even if he gives up the great Dao golden armor, he will only lose 20 to 30% of his combat power." He didn't say too much and didn't go too far. But that was enough. Old Ancestor Nyo sneered, his eyes icy cold. The conflict between him and that clan had nearly torn apart all pretense of cordiality. At this time, space shook and a faint angry roar echoed out. That clan, there are actually people in Skyfall Mountain who dare to join forces to kill the disciples of the 13th Tower. If there is an accident, it will be difficult for you to escape investigation. The clan leader frowned. He flicked his sleeves. With a loud bang, the space shaking was erased. As for the elder of the 13th Tower who had attacked from the outside, he was sent flying far away. Skyfall Mountain involves the ownership of the true, sovereign Great Tao. Since we've entered, the struggle for it is up to the heavens. Draw back. If you dare to be rude again, I will kill you. His voice was like a thunderclap, shaking the world. When Xin Yu found Baiji, she was in a much more distressed state than Nyo Daodu. If it weren't for the fact that she had broken through her sword Dao bottleneck in the Infinite Temple, she might have already perished. Nyo Daodu's eyes widened. She can also galvanize her Dao accumulation. She had a shocked expression. Xin Yu coughed. It must be because of Miss Nyo. You caused the great Dao to awaken. Thus she had this chance. Nyo Daodu thought for a moment. Is that so? Xin Yu nodded. It must be. Miss Nyo, there is no harm in saving her. Once the void bead's strength is exhausted, she can help us share the pressure. Nyo Daodu said, is there any need? The old ancestor told me that after this void bead is used, it can last for at least half a month. This old cow's family was rich. This sort of treasure could last for 1 or 2 days at most, but this void bead could last for half a month. Just from this alone, it wasn't too much to say that it was priceless. Cough. Xin Yu braced himself. Even so, no one knows how chaotic the situation in Skyfall Mountain will develop. Moreover, I don't think that clan is willing to give away the great Dao of Skyfall Mountain. With the eruption of Dao accumulation this time, they will definitely be tempted. I wonder if they will do something. We must guard against this as soon as possible. Nyo Daodu nodded. What you say makes sense. Xin Yu, what reasoning? Even he didn't know. Miss Nyo, please make your move. Xin Yu didn't know what would happen after he left the range of the void bead. It was best to be cautious. Moreover, Nyo Daodu had the golden armor of the great Dao. It was simply an invincible weapon. It would be a pity not to use it. How should I make my move? Nyo Daodu shrank back, a nervous look on her face. Xin Yu thought for a moment and took a deep breath. He stepped forwards and shouted, Miss Nyo Daodu is here. If you don't want to die, then scram. The cultivators who had their treasures destroyed had already fled without a trace. As for Nyo Daodu, the matter of her wearing the golden armor of the great Dao was no longer a secret within Skyfall Mountain. To oppose her, unless one's head was kicked by a donkey. Nyo Daodu, it's really her. You can't provoke this woman. Hurry and run. In the blink of an eye, the people surrounding Baiji retreated in panic. Nyo Do. She blinked and finally regained her composure. Her face lit up with excitement. So I'm so fierce now? Just by saying my name, I can scare people away. Xin Yu cupped his hands together, his face full of admiration. Miss Nyo is amazing. With your reputation, all evildoers flee. Nyo Daodu blushed. Of course she knew that these people were afraid because the old ancestor had given her the golden armor of the great Dao. She quickly waved her hand. It's not like that. Xin Yu smiled. He turned to look at Baiji. Miss, There are strange changes occurring within Skyfall Mountain. I wonder if you would be willing to come with us, so we can look after each other. He pointed a finger. This is Miss Niu Daodu, the #1 wandering cultivator of the present age. She is Niu Dingtian's most beloved granddaughter. She can guarantee our safety. Baiji frowned, a look of vigilance on her face. Indeed, not all women in this world were named Niu Daodu. Qin Yu sighed inwardly. He said with a sound transmission, I am one of Miss Ruru's people. Baiji's eyes brightened. Good. Niu Daodu lowered her voice. Zhou Huan. She suddenly changed her name. I think it's strange. Qin Yu coughed. Miss Niu is worrying too much. This woman was just hesitating. When she thought of how everyone fled because of your reputation, she made up her mind. Believe me, it's fine. Baiji walked over. She glanced at Qin Yu and frowned. Qin Yu was startled. It couldn't be. Was a woman's intuition really so fierce? Soon, he let out a sigh of relief. Where did you meet the madam? Qin Yu calmly replied, Swallow Mountain. How is the madam? Very good. Without waiting for her to continue asking, Qin Yu directly said, I have a mission to carry out in Skyfall Mountain. You must cooperate with me and not act on your own. Baiji glanced at him. Qin Yu was expressionless. He said, You and I are under Miss Niu's protection in Skyfall Mountain. Naturally, we will follow Miss Niu's orders. Baiji coldly snorted, tacitly agreeing. Niu Daodu thought for a moment. Then should we continue absorbing Dao accumulations? Qin Yu nodded. That would be for the best. Where are we going? This direction. Baiji frowned. She looked at Qin Yu, a bit confused. What sort of magic potion had he fed Niu Daodu that made her so obedient to him? However, this was also normal. Those chosen by the madam naturally had their own methods. But looking at the current situation, it was a bit despicable to be used on a woman. Her eyes became even colder. Qin Yu was disinclined to pay attention to Baiji's icy gaze. It's already good enough that I saved your life, but you still dare to throw your face at me? The range of the Void World bead expanded a bit, covering Baiji within. Her complexion changed, but she didn't say anything. The three of them quickly left. Mingzhe was the first disciple of the 13th Tower to rush over. In order to rush over, he had even left his attendants behind. Junior apprentice Sister Li, don't panic. I'm here. He lifted a hand, and a brilliant divine light erupted, piercing through space and forcing back a cultivator who was besieging him. The cultivator vomited blood. Not good. It's Mingzhe, a disciple of the 13th Tower. This is bad. Run. Let's leave this place first. The complexions of those besieging him changed. They turned and fled without hesitation. It wasn't just because Mingzhe's strike had severely wounded one of the besiegers, but also because of his reputation. He was one of the 4 gentlemen of the 13th Tower. He was known as the 3rd strongest person in the world below the Emperor Realm. Mount Skyfall itself was a great Dao that denied entry to any Emperor Realm cultivator who had crossed the threshold of the Diviner Realm. Otherwise, it would cause a war of the great Daos. Thus, in the hidden Mount Skyfall, Mingzhe was a nearly invincible existence. Kill him? That's right, it was possible. But all of them would likely be buried with him. Moreover, Mingzhe had already arrived. Could the other disciples of the 13th Tower be far behind? Chun Shanglu was half kneeling on the ground. His entire body was bathed in blood, and he only had the strength to gasp for breath. He looked at Mingzhe with gratitude. Li Ruhua grasped her sword and stood there gracefully. Besides her pale complexion, there was nothing wrong with her. She put away her sword and bowed. Thank you, Senior Apprentice Brother Mingzhe. Mingzhe waved his hand. Junior Apprentice Sister, there is no need to say anything. If you feel anything wrong, you should quickly adjust your breathing to avoid delaying your injuries. Li Ruhua shook her head. I'm fine. My family's old ancestor gave me a protective treasure before he left. Mingzhe nodded. That's good. Whoosh, whoosh. The other disciples of the 13th Tower arrived with the sound of air being torn apart. The Lotus distress signal meant that the situation was dire. Any disciple of the 13th Tower who saw it had to rush to the rescue immediately. Junior Sister Li. The newcomer spoke with a solemn expression. What happened? Su Wei was one of the four gentlemen of the 13th tower. He was ranked 7th among the strongest below Emperor realm. His eyes swept over Ming Zhe without batting an eyelid. Li Ruhua said, Senior brother Su, senior brother Ming Zhe knows about this. I will first adjust my breathing. Please protect me. Su Wei said, Junior sister Li, don't worry. He took a step forward. Ming Zhe's expression was calm. Junior sister, rest in peace. He had naturally noticed that Li Ruhua was on guard against him. She had waited until Su Wei had arrived before choosing to adjust her breathing. But this was very normal. He would have done the same if he were in her shoes. One must always be on guard against others. 2 hours later, all the other disciples of the 13th tower had arrived. Apart from Ming Zhe and Su Wei, there were 2 senior sisters and a senior brother. She was the last to enter the 13th tower. In reality, Li Ruhua was quite famous in the 13th tower. The tower master's evaluation of her had long since spread. This woman's luck was extraordinary. Today, this judgment had obviously been verified. They had learned of the siege from Ming Zhe. Adding their own experiences, they naturally understood what had happened. Li Ruhua had clearly seen the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain and formed a connection with it. It was an enviable feat, although disciples of the 13th tower were true geniuses. It was precisely because they had enough experience that they knew what it meant to be at the peak of the world and to have boundless glory. True emperors were existences that stood at the peak and could enjoy the scenery of all mountains. They might seem to be dragons and phoenixes among men, but it was uncertain if they could cross the threshold of the celestial realm. Moreover, they had the confidence to become true emperors and set foot on the peak of the world. Li Ruhua had grasped a single possibility today. If she succeeded, she would be able to leap into the sky and become a true emperor. How could she not be envious? Junior brother Ming Zhe, the eldest senior sister, who held the highest position in the crowd, spoke slowly. The air was silent. Everyone could sense that under this calmness was surging some sort of uneasiness and restlessness. The great Tao was before them. Ming Zhe said in a low voice, although Skyfall Mountain is a place beyond the heavens and is a world formed from the great Tao, it is still under the eyes of a true emperor. There was a contradiction in his words. The disciples of the 13th tower had a deep understanding of Skyfall Mountain. They knew that even true emperors couldn't casually probe it. Ming Zhe's words were obviously referring to, for example, the true emperor of that clan. It was difficult for anything that happened in Skyfall Mountain to escape his perception. Everyone subconsciously looked into the distance at Li Ruhua, who was meditating with her eyes closed. As for Chen Shanglu, he was just a minor character that no one would care about. At this moment, a calm voice suddenly sounded in everyone's hearts. I swear by the great Tao that I will not reveal a single word of what happened today. This voice belonged to that clan's true emperor. A great Tao oath. No one dared to violate it. The higher one's cultivation, the more it was so. With a great Tao oath as an endorsement, one was completely trustworthy. The air fell silent once more. No one spoke, but everyone knew that they had all heard what had just been said. This silence, in the current situation, had become profound and terrifying. Chapter 1739. After Sun Changqing entered the Tianluo mountain, he confirmed that he had no fate with the great Tao and felt extremely disappointed. However, he soon withdrew his thoughts, as the peak leader had given him a strict order. After that, Sun Changqing was like a gust of wind, blowing through every corner of Tianluo mountain. He only had one goal, to find Zhou Huan. He didn't know why the peak master was suddenly so interested in this person, but he could faintly guess that it was related to the feeling he felt when he saw Qin Yu. Then, there was a rough explanation. Zhou Huan was related to the peak master's great Tao imperfection. It was precisely because he realized this that Sun Changqing didn't dare to delay at all. Otherwise, how could he easily accept his fate in Tianluo Mountain? Especially when the Taoist accumulation was soaring into the sky and everyone was fighting for it. His life was in the hands of the Peak Lord. However, the most vexing thing was that the Skyfall mountain range was a world of its own. It was shockingly large. Sun Changqing had already done his best, but he still hadn't found Zhou Huan's whereabouts. The Peak Lord had been silent the entire time and had not urged Sun Changqing. However, to Sun Changqing, this silence was like a silent mountain. He did not know when it would smash down and shatter his bones. Found you. The voice of the Peak leader suddenly appeared in his mind. In the next moment, Sun Changqing lost control of his body. Mount Tianluo was a world of its own, and anyone who had crossed the celestial door could not enter. However, this did not mean that there was no other way to send power into it. Niu Dingtian's golden armor of the Great Path was like this. Now, on the cloud-sweeping peak, the Peak Lord who was only a step away from the Emperor realm could also do something similar. Bang! Space instantly exploded, and Sun Changqing instantly accelerated. His body was like a phantom, whistling into the distance. Black clouds began to churn in the sky, and wisps of terrifying chi scattered down. They intertwined with each other like a huge net, trying to pull Sun Changqing into it. Patriarch, what are you waiting for? Sun Changqing shouted. In the next moment, a large hand appeared out of thin air, and it waved into the sky to disperse the black clouds that had converged there. Qing Tian, I can only help you fight for half a day. Half a day was enough. Bang! Sun Changqing's speed was even faster, smashing through space and whistling into the distance. A throbbing feeling gushed out from the depths of his heart. He stopped and looked up into the distance. There was nothing there, but he could feel an extremely strong, uneasy aura that was growing stronger and stronger. Danger was approaching. Who was it? Qin Yu's first thought was that his identity had been exposed, causing that clan to kill him. However, he soon realized that he was wrong. Rumble. An earth-shattering explosion came from afar, and a black line appeared in his vision. It was him, Sun Changqing. Qin Yu frowned. He couldn't figure out just how this person could erupt with such a formidable strength. More importantly, given the current situation in Mount Tianluo, instead of fighting for the Great Tao, he came to find trouble with him. This kid must be crazy. Niu Daodu also recognized Sun Changqing, and her expression changed. Zhou Huan, he's looking for you. Qin Yu nodded. He took a deep breath, but before he could speak, Niu Daodu pulled him behind her. His aura isn't right. Don't come out. As she spoke, she took a step forward. Sun Changqing, I, Niu Daodu, am here. If you don't want to die, hurry up and scram. With a loud shout, her momentum was extraordinary. The rapidly approaching Sun Changqing didn't say a single word. He clenched his fist and punched out. Bang! Thunder exploded like a waterfall, instantly piercing through space and smashing into Niu Daodu's body. Brilliant golden light erupted. The thunder cracked apart and scattered in all directions, vanishing. It disappeared. The golden armor of the Great Tao appeared on its own, protecting Niu Daodu. Even though she was struck by the terrifying thunder, she was still unharmed. Scram! Sun Changqing roared out, his killing intent wild and cruel. Niu Daodu was stunned, as if she hadn't regained her composure. She had already revealed her name, and yet Sun Changqing still dared to attack. He isn't Sun Changqing. Miss Niu, be careful. Qin Yu loudly warned. By the time Niu Daodu regained her composure, Sun Changqing had already arrived in front of her and punched out. Bang! A terrifying strength crashed into the earth. Where Niu Daodu was, the earth was instantly torn apart, turning into a complete mess. As for her figure, it was smashed deep into the ground by this fist. It was already impossible to see her again. Sun Changqing didn't stop. His feet fell as he hurtled towards Qin Yu. At this moment, his cold eyes were filled with murderous intent. In samsara, the sun and moon in those eyes were within Qin Yu's body. In other words, it was this person who had ruined the plans he had laid out for 10,000 years and forcefully destroyed the turning point of his great Tao. How could Venerable Sky not hate him? He was also pleasantly surprised that he had regained what he had lost. As long as he could kill Qin Yu, and take back the sun and moon in his eyes, he would be able to make up for the flaws in his great Tao and break through his bottleneck to become a true sovereign. Sun Changqing's ankle was suddenly grabbed, and he was pulled back. You want to kill Zhou Huan? Dream on. The palm covered in the golden armor of the great Tao suddenly exerted strength and swung Sun Changqing up. With loud bangs, he smashed into the ground, creating countless craters. Sun Changqing held his head in his hands, his eyes ice cold. With a loud cracking sound, his leg was broken off at the ankle. Then, he borrowed the strength of Niu Daodu's throw to hurtle towards Qinyu. Bang! His fist smashed into the void bead. The small world that opened began to wildly twist and cave in, as if it would shatter at any moment. But at this time, faint traces of golden light appeared on the surface of the void bead. Shock and anger appeared in Sun Changqing's eyes. He turned his head, his icy cold eyes covering Niu Daodu. As expected, the golden armor of the great Tao on her body had dimmed by a great deal. In order to save him, you diverted the strength of the golden armor of the great Tao. Do you want to die? Sun Changqing slowly said. The sole of his foot that had been cut off had already grown back. Niu Daodu paled. She was clearly afraid, but her eyes were firm. I will not allow you to harm Zhou Huan in the slightest. Sun Changqing frowned. Then I will kill you first. Bang! The ground instantly shattered. He hurtled towards Niu Daodu. At the same time, millions of bolts of lightning broke out from his body, weaving together into a massive pool of thunder that submerged her. Rumble, rumble. Terrifying fluctuations of strength wildly erupted from within. Baiji furrowed her eyebrows. What sort of bewitching potion did you feed her? In order to save you, she is willing to give up her life. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. If I told you that I didn't know, would you believe me? Baiji coldly sneered. She glared at him, her intentions obvious. But this was the truth. Just what was Niu Daodu thinking? Qin Yu discovered that even he wasn't sure what was going on. But there was no doubt that the favor he owed her this time was growing larger and larger. Originally, he had planned to give Niu Daodu some compensation after the matter at Skyfall Mountain was over. But in the current situation, how could he compensate her? He couldn't just say that he had saved her life, and now she had risked her life to help him. Then they could call it even. There was no such logic in this world. And as a person, they had to have some dignity. Luckily, Niu Daodu's golden armor of the great Tao was a heaven-defying trump card. It was equal to the defense of a true emperor. Sun Changqing's current strength was indeed terrifying. But as long as it wasn't a true emperor, there was no way to break it. From this point of view, Niu Daodu would at most be a little frightened. Her life wouldn't be in danger. But he was afraid that someone would think of a way to break the current situation, the golden armor of the great Tao. If the armor was given to Niu Daodu, Niu Dingtian would have a flaw. And in the current Central Desolate, there were many people who wanted to deal with the Niu family. Within the pool of thunder, Sun Changqing's eyes turned silver white. They were cold and indifferent, like a god from the highest heavens. Let's do it, he said in a low voice. His voice was covered by the roar of thunder. But these 3 words were destined to set off a storm in the world. The birth of a true emperor was difficult. But killing a true emperor would be 10 times or even 100 times more difficult. But even so, there were still cases of true emperors dying in the records of the Central Desolate region. This showed that although they were peerlessly powerful and had reached the peak of the world, they could still be killed. For example, Niu Dingtian at this moment. His physical defense was the best in the world, comparable to that of the survivors of the ancient times. But after all, it was only physical defense. After losing the golden armor of the great Tao, as the leader of the clan had said, he would lose at least 20 to 30% of his combat strength. For a powerful true emperor like Niu Dingtian, this was already an extremely weak state. The opportunity couldn't be missed. It wouldn't come again. Outside, the Tianluo mountain, Niu Dingtian's phantom suddenly snorted coldly and disappeared. The surroundings were quiet. The air was filled with an emotion known as knowing what was going on. Someone had made a move. And the person who had made a move was right here. After all, for a true emperor with one thought 10,000 li, the consumption of strength to maintain a projection was negligible. Niu Dingtian directly dispersed his phantom. It was obvious that the situation he was facing now was very serious. And between true emperors, once the great Tao involved life and death, there would be irreconcilable hatred. If they weren't confident, they wouldn't make a move. Perhaps there would be a world phenomenon today, and a true emperor would die. The phantom of the clan leader was silent. Only a sharp light flashed in the depths of his eyes. On the sweeping cloud peak, Sky Bearing had made a deal with him. As long as he succeeded today and became a true emperor, he would become a guest of that clan. That was why he had made a move in 300 years. This was tantamount to another strong safeguard for that clan. It would be best if Niu Dingtian was killed. That would give that clan more breathing room. Otherwise, they would at least force him to take back the golden armor of the great Tao. Killing him might be difficult, but the latter wasn't. As long as the golden armor of the great Tao was taken back, Sky-bearing spiritual master could easily achieve his goal. As for Niu Dingtian's revenge, afterwards, it was inevitable that he would have a headache. No one wanted to offend a true emperor to the point of no return. But now, between life and death, that clan had no other choice. Heavenly Bull Region. Niu family's base territory, Heavenly Bull City. At this time, black clouds hung low in the sky, ready to overtake the city. Thunder rumbled, releasing tens of thousands of bolts of lightning that pierced through the skies. A terrifying aura arrived, suppressing everyone to the extreme, making it hard for them to breathe. Niu Dingshan's complexion was calm. He shouted out loud, "Children of the Niu family, follow me to form the Heavenly Bull Great Array to protect the old ancestor." He certainly knew that the reason his enemy had come today was because the old ancestor had placed the golden armor of the great Tao on Niu Daoda's body. The old ancestor was protecting his daughter. Niu Dingshan's eyes were firm. He was ready to die. However, before he could make a move, he suffered a kick and was sent flying. Niu Dingtian was annoyed. He cursed, "I'm fine. It's not time for you to risk your life yet. Hurry up and get the hell out of here." He looked up at the tumbling black clouds. Lightning illuminated his face and excitement filled his eyes. "Come at me. My hands have been itching for a long time. I'll use you all to stretch my muscles." Bang! With a heaven-shaking explosion, the entire Heavenly Bull City sank 3 feet. Niu Dingtian shot into the sky, smashing through space and tearing apart the lightning. Chapter 1740. The darkness was like a tide, and the lightning was like a prison. Niu Dingtian's laughter was so loud that even the thunder couldn't drown it out. "Even if I lose the Great Path Golden Armor, I can still beat you into a corner. Come on, hit harder. Are you drinking milk? Ha ha ha. Don't go. Fight with me today. Take my Heavenly Bull Demon Fist." Boom! A huge sound rang out, and a figure could be vaguely seen being sent flying. Apart from the true sovereigns, no one in the world could clearly see the battle between the 3 true sovereigns in the 9 heavens. Niu Dingtian was terrifyingly strong. Even without the Great Path Golden Armor, he still had the upper hand against 2 opponents. Although the 2 true sovereigns didn't really want to fight to the death, his strength was still frightening. But his strength was still frightening. Maybe he had already touched the level of the true sovereigns. He had reached, or was infinitely close to the current level of the Qin Emperor. No wonder he dared to give the Great Path Golden Armor to Niu Daodu. Outside Heavenly Bull City, far away from the battlefield, the phantom of the Imperial Master sighed. What a pity. If Niu Dingtian fell into a disadvantageous position today and showed signs of defeat, he would kill Niu Dingtian without hesitation. But now, he didn't dare to make a move. No one was sure whether Niu Dingtian still had strength left. Even if he didn't, Niu Dingtian's level would definitely not wait for death if he was really in a desperate situation. It wasn't difficult to drag people to the grave with him. That was why the Imperial Master said it was a pity, because this should be the best chance to kill Niu Dingtian. But even he didn't dare to make a move, so the others who were watching wouldn't take the risk. In the inky black clouds, the true sovereign from the antiquity age was shocked and angry. Niu Dingtian was stronger than he had imagined. Unless he risked his life, he couldn't kill him. But he didn't want to risk his life, especially when his courage had been broken by Niu Dingtian. He was the one who was sent flying by the heavenly bull demon fist. A mouthful of blood rushed to his mouth, but he swallowed it back. It's over. Let's go. The ancient remnant turned around and left. In an instant, he broke free from the black clouds. With a punch, he shattered the space and disappeared within. Trash! The other true emperor roared angrily. No wonder the ancient remnant would end up in such a state. How could a bunch of cowards accomplish anything? He had always felt that Niu Dingtian's strength was not that strong. Without the golden armor of the Great Path, he had lost 20 to 30% of his battle prowess. Yet he was still able to fight 1 against 2 and put them at a disadvantage. He didn't believe that Niu Dingtian had reached the level of a true emperor. However, the ancient remnant true monarch had already fled. If Xiao Chun remained alone, he would really be in danger. Niu Dingtian laughed. Old man Wujia, you're the only one left. Why don't you run for your life? Are you waiting for me to beat the shit out of you? Of the 2 people who made a move today, one was the ancestor of one of the 4 sects, the Boundless Sect. Niu Dingtian, don't be too arrogant. I don't believe that you've reached the Emperor realm. You will pay the price for unleashing your strength today. You better not reveal any flaws, or else the Ox family will definitely be exterminated. Old Ancestor Realmless roared, his voice spreading in all directions. Sinister intentions. These words were bound to fall into the ears of those with ulterior motives. Once there was a problem with Niu Dingtian, the entire Niu family would not be able to escape. Ha ha ha! Niu Dingtian laughed. Old man Wujia, in terms of eloquence, I am indeed much stronger than you with your cultivation. That's right. I'm very weak right now. If anyone wants to attack, then come. Look, no one dares to attack. Then let me send you out of here. Boom! There was a heaven-shaking explosion. Niu Dingtian punched out. The Boundless Sect's old ancestor was sent flying, blood spurting out from his nose and mouth. This punch was more than twice as strong as the heavenly bull demon subduing fist. It had severely wounded the Boundless Sect's old ancestor. Niu Dingtian, I swear I won't let you go. With an angry roar, the Boundless Sect's old ancestor spat out blood and tore through space to escape. 1 against 2, a great victory. Within Heavenly Bull City, there was a sudden burst of cheers. Niu Dingshan shouted at the top of his lungs, his voice louder than thunder. Old Ancestor is mighty, number 1 under the heavens. Niu Dingtian laughed with his hands on his hips, his grin reaching the back of his ears. Don't be so arrogant. I don't care if I'm number 1 under the heavens or not. The Imperial Advisor's lips twitched. He looked deeply at Niu Dingtian, who was laughing into the heavens. 1 glance, 2 eyes, 3 eyes. He frowned and took a step back. He cupped his hands together and smiled. Mr. Niu is unparalleled under the heavens. This poor priest admires you greatly. Farewell. He turned and left, his phantom directly dissipating. The Imperial Advisor didn't see anything wrong. But that punch just now was indeed ridiculously strong. Did Niu Dingtian really break through? As the Imperial Advisor turned and left without hesitation, the gazes that were focused on Heavenly Bull City turned away. Niu Dingtian sneered. He turned and returned to Heavenly Bull City. Niu Dingshan and the other Niu family juniors knelt on the ground, kowtowing and shouting. Old Ancestor's cultivation is heaven-piercing. Humph humph. As long as you know, as long as I am here, our Heavenly Bull City will never change. Niu Dingtian waved his hand. Go back and do what you need to do. Niu Dingshan respectfully nodded. He sent everyone away and hurried towards the old ancestor's cultivation area. It's fine. Just as he finished speaking, he coughed, and his face flushed red. Niu Dingshan hurriedly said, Old Ancestor. Niu Dingtian glared at him. Get out of here and wander around. You're the one causing trouble for the Nyo family if you stay here. It's just a small injury. I'll be fine after a period of seclusion. His realm hadn't reached the peak of the Emperor realm. The boundless sect's old ancestor had guessed correctly. But unfortunately, there was only an injury and no reward. Of course, even if he hadn't reached the peak, the gap was extremely small. That was why Nyo Dingtian could fight 1 against 2 and beat the ancient remnant and the boundless sect's old ancestor. But he had used too much force in the last punch. It was a self-inflicted wound. He didn't feel good when the boundless sect's old ancestor was seriously injured, but he couldn't say these words out loud. Otherwise, it would be too damaging to his prestige. Moreover, this punch was a deal between him and Misty. It was worth it to exchange a small injury for a promise from her. A perfect immortal species, she truly coexisted with heaven and earth. Whether it was strength or fate, she was the most powerful and noble existence in the world. Even if Misty's fate had fallen and she was no longer perfect, in Nyo Dingtian's eyes, she was still far more worthy of being close to him than a true emperor. So when Misty sent a message asking him to push the boat with the current and punch, Nyo Dingtian agreed without hesitation. Outside Skyfall Mountain, the true emperor projections were in a tense atmosphere. Nyo Dingtian had won. His victory was clean and unexpectedly beautiful. The strength he had displayed was terrifying, and the boundless sect's old ancestor's serious injury was a silent threat and suppression. Shua, Nyo Dingtian's phantom appeared out of thin air. He laughed loudly, full of confidence. Ha ha ha! You dare to come to my heavenly bull city? You have no idea of death. Just you wait. Once the matter at Skyfall Mountain is over, I will take back the golden armor and visit the boundless sect first. Cold intent filled the air and killing intent radiated. Nyo Dingtian had always been a man of his word. The boundless sect was in trouble. In the past, Nyo Dingtian had attacked them and destroyed half of their sect. This time, humph, it was even harder to say. No one spoke. The boundless sect's old ancestor had joined forces with the ancient remnant true emperors. 2 against 1. Nyo Dingtian, who was not in his best condition, had been beaten into a sorry state. This was the price they had to pay. However, this did not mean that they would sit back and watch Nyo Dingtian destroy the boundless sect. The 4 sects and 4 families were in confrontation with each other. There were conflicts of interest, but there were also deep ties of interest between them. In particular, as the last of the 4 sects, the boundless sect had signed a series of clauses in order to become one of the 4 sections. They had voluntarily given up part of their interests in exchange for the approval of the other members of the 4 sects and 4 families. If something happened to the boundless sect, or, to put it more bluntly, if they were replaced by the Nyo family, it would directly harm their interests. Of course, from another point of view, the boundless sect being hated by the Nyo family was equal to sharing the risk for them. At the very least, the Sky Split, Daoyuan, and Black Marsh sects could breathe a sigh of relief. If the Nyo family wanted to establish a new sect, there would be no conflict with them. This would certainly ease the tense atmosphere between them. And this was the effect that Nyo Dingtian wanted to achieve by opening his mouth. It was too low class to simply say harsh words. As an existence that could become a true emperor and cultivate to the point of being on the verge of the strongest, it was naturally impossible for him to be as crude as he appeared. The patriarch suddenly said, "Old ancestor Nyo is full of vigor. He has just beaten back 2 true emperors, and he is already declaring revenge. It seems that he still has strength to spare." There was a hidden meaning in his words. Nyo Dingtian looked over with a faint smile. "Patriarch, if you think that this old ox is bluffing, why don't we have a fight?" He took a step forward and laughed. "Great. I haven't had enough just now. This old ox is willing to do it. There is no need to trouble Patriarch." As he spoke, his phantom quickly became solid, and an astonishing aura burst out from it, instantly suppressing the surroundings. The Patriarch's expression changed slightly. "Nyo Dingtian, I have to preside over the affairs of Mount Tianluo today. I don't have time to accompany you in your madness." His eyes were filled with anger, and at the same time, a trace of deep fear. "Old ancestor Nyo, please calm down. Don't ruin the opportunity for the younger generation to ascend to the heavens." That's right. Mount Tianluo is right in front of us. Once a battle between true emperors breaks out, it will definitely affect it. Patriarch doesn't mean anything else. Old ancestor, you think too much. The other true emperors said one after another. If it was in another place, they wouldn't care about the fight between the two, and they would be happy to see them fight to the death. But not now. Niu Dingtian hesitated for a moment, and then stopped his action of descending with a cold snort. The phantom's aura gradually dissipated. "Patriarch, I will go to the Boundless sect first. After smashing their mountain gate, I will come to the Changshan domain to fight with you." The Patriarch nodded expressionlessly. "I agree." He turned around and looked at Mount Tianluo with a trace of gloominess in his eyes. No matter what, he had been humiliated today, and Niu Dingtian's words were obviously a threat. Spiritual Master Qingtian's plan had failed. Now, the best result was that they obtained the Great Tao in Mount Tianluo, and the clan would have another true emperor. The second was that the Great Tao was taken away, and the clan would have another true emperor for 300 years. If both of them failed, the clan would have a harder time. Chapter 1741. Within the Thunder Pond, Sun Chongqing's heart gradually sank to the bottom of the valley. Half a day had passed, but Niu Daodu's great Dao golden armor showed no signs of being taken back. Just what was going on? With the current situation, the agreement between him and that clan would not be violated. Niu Dingtian was actually powerful to this degree. Even without the great Dao golden armor, he could still fight two people at once. There was a high chance that his plan had failed, and it was impossible to conceal what happened at Skyfall Mountain today. Once this matter came to an end, Niu Dingtian would surely condemn him. But Cloud Sweeping Peak would face a great calamity. Sun Chongqing hated this. The first hatred's great Tao was right in front of him. As long as he could obtain it, he could become a true sovereign. Although the heavens were high and the waters were wide, he would never be able to reach them. The second hatred's clan might have already calculated beforehand. Whether they cooperated with him or not, Cloud Sweeping Peak would have no other choice. If it didn't want to be destroyed by Niu Ding Mountain, then the best way out was to join forces with that clan. But he wasn't a true sovereign, so he would inevitably be reduced to a vassal. The third hatred's Qin Yu had ruined his chance to become a true sovereign. Now that he was in front of him, he couldn't kill him. He didn't dare to personally descend to Skyfall Mountain. This was because Niu Dingtian's projection was likely here. Once he discovered him, he would surely kill him. Niu Daodu's heart settled. With the defense of the great Dao golden armor, she was in an invincible position. Even if she stood still and let Sun Chongqing hammer her, she could still tire him to death. Without fear, her attacks were even more direct and forceful. Sun Chongqing was forced to constantly retreat and evade. Today's matter could no longer be accomplished. Leaving was the best choice to avoid damaging his own strength. But Sun Chongqing didn't want to. He wanted to stay and fight one last time. What if there was a chance? After all, his great Dao flaw was right in front of him, and Skyfall Mountain was like a purgatory right now. At any moment, unexpected dangers could erupt, and sometimes danger also meant opportunity. With a roar, Sun Chongqing punched out, sending the armored Niu Daodu flying away. At the same time, he borrowed the rebounding force to rapidly retreat. With the great Dao golden armor, Niu Daodu was in an invincible position. Continuing this stalemate was meaningless. "Don't run. Ha ha. Weren't you very arrogant and wanted to kill me?" Niu Daodu laughed excitedly after obtaining victory. Within the Void Realm bead, Qin Yu let out a breath and secretly gave Old Cow a thumbs up. So awesome. It seemed that Niu Dingtian's strength was much stronger than he had imagined. It was no wonder that Little Meat had chosen him as her partner. Other than character, strength was also an important factor to consider. Baiji looked at Niu Daodu with a dignified expression. She knew very well that if the two of them became enemies, she would be in an invincible position. Great Dao, golden armor, what a bully! So what if you have a powerful background? That's right. Today, Niu Daodu would use facts to prove that she was amazing. Miss Niu's strength is unparalleled. You were able to force back the villains of Sweeping Cloud Peak. You are truly fierce, Qin Yu loudly said, his face full of admiration. Although that was indeed the case, Baiji could not help but roll her eyes at his tone. This person might have some tricks up his sleeve and be valued by Madame, but his character was terrible. He could not be trusted in the future. Niu Daodu's face flushed red. She awkwardly said, "This is all because of the High Ancestor's great Dao golden armor. I know this in my heart." Soon, she stuck out her chest. "But no matter what, Zhou Huan, you don't need to be afraid in the future. If son Changqing dares to come again, I will hammer him to death." Qin Yu nodded again and again. "With Miss Niu here, I naturally feel relieved." As he spoke, he looked up and then looked away. That race's true sovereign was spying on this place. But it was clear that he hadn't sensed anything wrong with Qin Yu, nor did he know that Qin Yu had already sensed his existence. This was because as time passed, Qin Yu and that race's 24 people were doing their best to help him unravel the Tao. In other words, they were helping him refine the great Tao. Now, Qin Yu could already feel the existence of that race's true sovereign. And before long, once he refined more of the great Tao and his connection with Skyfall Mountain deepened, he would be able to shield himself from his perception. Humph humph. At that time, that race would be blind to everything that happened at Skyfall Mountain. Qin Yu had already prepared a pleasant surprise. "Miss Niu, the commotion just now was too great. It will definitely attract attention. Let's leave this place first." Niu Daodu nodded. "Lead the way." Qin Yu was stunned. He looked at Niu Daodu. She looked back at Qin Yu, a curious expression on her face. She could roughly interpret it as, "What are you looking at me for?" Qin Yu coughed. If that's the case, then let's go this way." Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. If it weren't for the fact that he was certain that Little Meat was currently in his soul space, Qin Yu would have suspected that Niu Daodu had been possessed by her. She was too cooperative. She simply agreed to every request. Qin Yu didn't even need to explain anything. Even a naive girl shouldn't go this far, right? Moreover, according to Qin Yu's understanding, while Niu Daodu was simple and naive, she wasn't stupid at all. Have my identity been discovered? Qin Yu thought about it several times, but he didn't say anything. Niu Daodu's cooperation couldn't be any better. As for the reason, he would think about it later. Qin Yu led the way, and the three people quickly left. On the 13th floor, 6 official disciples and 6 personal attendants gathered. Shen Shangolf had already fallen asleep. His eyebrows were tightly furrowed, a pained expression on his face. Li Ruhua paled. She slowly said, "Senior apprentice brothers, senior apprentice sisters, do you really want to do this?" Her eyes fell on Mingzhe. Mingzhe lowered his head, avoiding her eyes. The elder senior apprentice, sister sneered. Junior apprentice, sister Li, since things have come to this, what need is there to say any more? You and I both know that there is no way out. In the 13th floor, it was strictly forbidden for fellow disciples to kill each other. Once discovered, they would be severely punished. At the very least, their cultivation would be crippled and they would be expelled. So, what she said wasn't wrong. From a moment they thought of this to the moment they took the first step, they had already lost all paths of retreat. Su Wei slowly said, "Junior apprentice, Sister Li, you are very smart. You should know what to do. Tell us the truth about the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. Why suffer so much pain?" "That's right. In my 13th floor, there are many interrogation methods. Junior apprentice, Sister Li might not have heard of them, but I advise you not to try them. You will have to speak sooner or later. Why suffer such evil? Junior apprentice, Sister Li, please consider this carefully." Li Ruhua was silent for several breaths of time. She slowly nodded. "You are right. I agree. But there's only one great Tao. Senior apprentice brothers and sisters, How do you plan on distributing it? Everyone's expressions changed. The disciples of the 13th floor still maintained their silence. But behind them, the attendants who had shared honor and disgrace with them, whose lives and deaths had already begun to shine with a cold light. The great Tao was right in front of them. Since they could touch Li Ruhua, that naturally meant that there was no one they couldn't kill today. Ming just suddenly said, "Junior apprentice, Sister Li, you don't need to worry about this. You only need to tell us everything you know. But I have to remind Junior Sister of something. It's best if you speak truthfully about everything because it involves the Grand Tao. You can't conceal anything at all, and once we notice that something's off, then Junior Sister will definitely regret it." Li Ruhua said, "Thank you for the reminder, Senior Apprentice Brother Mingjia. I will tell you everything I know." She lowered her head and looked down at the earth beneath her feet. In truth, the 13th floor's judgment of Mount Skyfall was somewhat wrong. This is because the Great Tao has always been right in front of us, or to be more accurate, we are currently within the Great Tao. She lifted a hand and pointed at everything around her. The sky, the earth, the air, the vegetation, the mountains and rivers, all living beings, all of this is a part of the Great Tao. These words caused the expressions of the 5 disciples of the 13th floor to change. They felt that it was incomparably profound, but also appropriate. Li Ruhua wasn't lying. So it turned out that Mount Skyfall was the Great Tao, not that the Great Tao was hidden within. Although it seemed simple, it was like piercing through a window paper that had been blocking everyone's vision. They felt their eyes suddenly light up. Su Wei's eyes were fervent. He took a step forward and said, "Li Ruhua, speak more clearly." He felt as if he had faintly touched upon something. Li Ruhua said, "Mount Skyfall is the true, sovereign Great Tao. According to my judgment, perhaps the first time I saw it, I could determine whether or not I had fate with the Great Tao. If there is fate, then I can see the essence of the Great Tao. Otherwise, even if I am within it, I will not be able to understand it." Eldest Senior Sister's expression changed. "What do you mean?" Li Ruhua lightly said, "What I mean is that senior brothers and sisters are wasting your time. If you cannot see the Great Tao, then you are not fated with it. This is not something I can help you with." Eldest Senior Sister's pupils shrank and her face paled. Her intuition told her that Li Ruhua wasn't lying. Damn it, why didn't she say this before? If they knew this, they wouldn't have done anything. Then now, it would be a different situation. They would protect Li Ruhua with all their might and help her obtain the Mount Skyfall Great Tao. Unfortunately, they couldn't go back. Mingjia took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. "Junior Sisterly, why must you do this?" From the start, he had harbored the thought of using Li Ruhua, but he couldn't deny that a beautiful woman could always stir up the possessiveness in a man's heart. Mingjia had seriously considered becoming Tao companions with her in the future. But then, the situation changed too quickly. He had no choice but to make a choice and cut off all possibilities between the two. Li Ruhua said, "Senior brother, are you blaming me for not telling you in advance?" Her lips curled up in a mocking smile. "But even if I told you in advance, would senior brothers and sisters believe me?" Everyone's faces stiffened, their hearts silent. They wouldn't believe it. Instead, they would think that Li Ruhua was worried they would make things difficult for her and deliberately came up with an excuse. So, regardless of whether she said it or not, as long as they had such thoughts, things would develop to this point. This was inevitable. Eldest Senior Sister gritted her teeth. "Junior Sisterly, are you mocking us? You may have succeeded, but this will not change your fate today." She took a deep breath, her white robes icy. Junior Apprentice, Sister Li Ruhua, was surrounded by powerful enemies in Mount Skyfall and unfortunately perished. We couldn't save her in time and could only hunt down the culprits to comfort Junior Apprentice Sister Li's soul in heaven. No one spoke. This was tacit agreement. At this point, there was no turning back. Li Ruhua had to die for them to be safe. Eldest Senior Sister stepped forward. "Junior Apprentice Sister Li, go on your way." She lifted a hand and pointed a finger. It didn't matter who killed her today. Everyone had committed a great crime of the sect. Once exposed, no one could escape punishment. So, she didn't mind killing Li Ruhua herself. After all, Mingzhe had been close to her in the past. Over this period of time, Mingzhe's emotions couldn't escape her eyes. What a lewd and lowly whore. But at this moment, eldest senior sister's expression changed. Her finger was frozen by an invisible force. Moreover, this freezing force was spreading rapidly. Quick kill! Before she could finish her sentence, the head of the furious eldest senior sister exploded into pieces. It's Li Ruhua. She comprehended the great Tao. Kill her together. Together, the disciples of the 13th floor roared and attacked without hesitation. No one begged for mercy because they knew that there was no possibility of reconciliation between the two sides. Today, either Li Ruhua or they would die. Li Ruhua's expression was calm. She lifted a hand and pointed. The space suddenly solidified, turning into an invisible mountain that blocked the four of them. On the other side, Mingzhe's pupils constricted violently. He turned and fled without hesitation. A scream came from behind him. It was Su Wei. They were both in the lower 10 Emperor realm. Although Su Wei's ranking was slightly higher, there wasn't much of a difference in strength between them. Su Wei was killed in the blink of an eye. If it were him, he would have suffered the same fate. Face pale, Mingzhe gritted his teeth. His body suddenly exploded into a scarlet mist of blood. His fleeing speed skyrocketed. But at this moment, his vision suddenly distorted. When his vision recovered, he was back at his original spot. Everyone but him had died a violent death. Mingzhe knelt down when he saw Li Ruhua. Junior sister Li, please be merciful and spare my life. From now on, I am willing to follow you and pledge my loyalty to you. Li Ruhua said indifferently. Senior brother Ming lived until now to tell you that my strength just now was only enough to kill 3 people. If senior brother and Su Wei had attacked together, I would have been the one killed. Mingzhe's eyes widened and a trace of regret crossed his face. He knew that Li Ruhua wouldn't spare his life if she said these words. If you want to kill me, then let's die together. Mingzhe's pale face twisted with anger. Boom! He rushed over and self-destructed. A terrifying shockwave drowned out Li Ruhua. It took a long time for it to slowly disperse. She still stood where she was. From the surface, she didn't seem injured at all. Her eyes were cold. Li Ruhua swept her eyes over her surroundings. She flicked her sleeves and took Chun Shanglu away. After she left, several figures appeared on the battlefield, their faces dark and uncertain. The disciples of the 13th Tower had been almost completely wiped out. If this matter spread out, it would surely set off waves. After all, the image of the 13th Tower had always been that of a transcendent, immortal realm. It turned out that there was such a secret killing within the sect. But this wasn't the important point. Li Ruhua had already grasped a portion of Mount Skyfall's great Tao. Otherwise, there was no other explanation for what had just happened. Should they chase after her? Everyone hesitated, struggling in their hearts. But in the end, no one dared to take this step. This was because Li Ruhua's performance just now had been too terrifying. Of the 5 disciples of the 13th Tower, Mingzhe and Su Wei were even ranked in the top 10 below the Emperor realm. If it were them, they would have died even faster. As for Li Ruhua's claim that she only had enough strength to kill 3 people, who would dare believe her? Mingzhe's self-destruction hadn't harmed her at all. The great Tao of Mount Skyfall was likely to fall into Li Ruhua's hands. Chapter 1742. Puff! She spat out a mouthful of blood. The red plum blossoms on her chest bloomed in the wind. Li Ruhua's face was pale and her eyes were dim. She had indeed grasped a portion of the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. But using it wasn't simple at all. It was like an exchange. She could use it, but she had to pay a corresponding price. At this time, Li Ruhua's condition was terrible. She was truly an arrow at the end of its flight. Although it seemed easy to suppress and kill Mingzhe, Su Wei, and the others, the truth was that this was her limit. If it weren't for the fact that she had deliberately used Mingzhe's self-destruction to deter those spying on her, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Li Ruhua took a deep breath. She lifted a hand and pointed a finger between Chun Shanglu's eyebrows. "Ah!" he cried out and suddenly woke up. "Miss, how are you?" Li Ruhua said. "I must immediately heal myself. I cannot be disturbed during this time. Help protect me." As she spoke, blood gushed out from the corners of her lips. "Good. Miss, hurry and heal yourself." Chun Shanglu had a firm expression. "Unless they step over my dead body, no one can harm you." Li Ruhua closed her eyes, her aura gradually falling silent. This was a secret healing technique unique to the 13th floor. It was similar to the turtle breathing art. It could cause one to fall into a state of suspended animation, stimulating one's potential and rapidly healing injuries. The advantages were obvious, but there were also flaws. Once this secret technique was used, one's perception of the outside world would be cut off, and their five senses would fall into a deep sleep. Someone had to protect them in order to ensure their safety. Otherwise, once they closed their eyes, it was likely they would never be able to open them again. Chun Shanglu looked up at Li Ruhua's face. Some unknown emotions surged in the depths of his eyes. His current identity was a disciple of the 13th floor, a servant of the Li family elder Li Ruhua. He was a small and unremarkable character. But in the past, he was the beloved son of Guanhai City's city lord Chun Yuanshin, the future leader of the Chun family. In this world, there was no such thing as success without reason. For Chun Yuanshin to rise from the wilderness and become a city lord of a main city in the western wasteland, he naturally had his own lucky chance. And this lucky chance was passed on to his son, Chun Shanglu. Of course, everyone thought he had fainted, but he hadn't. Even nobodies had their own trump cards and fortuitous encounters. He was very clear about everything that was happening in the outside world, and if he wanted to, he could break free and wake up at any time. But Chun Shanglu did not. He had patiently waited until now, waiting for Li Ruhua to kill all the disciples of the 13th floor, waiting for her to lose so much of her strength that she had no choice but to use her secret technique, turtle breath, to enter a state of suspended animation. And now his chance had come. Chun Shanglu licked his dry and cracked lips. His pupils suddenly dilated, swallowing all the whites of his eyes. His eyes were pitch black like a bottomless abyss, strange and terrifying. Taking a deep breath, Chun Shanglu suppressed the agitation in his heart and raised his hand to grab Li Ruhua. Hiss! He took a deep breath, bent back, and raised his head. His face revealed a carefree, blurred expression mixed with violence and bloodthirst. Li Ruhua, who was in deep sleep, was like a piece of dead wood, without the slightest reaction. Wisps of blood-colored light flowed out of her body and into Chun Shanglu's. Through this process, he finally understood what Li Ruhua had said before. Resplendent and dazzling gold finally appeared in his world, coming from the earth beneath his feet and the sky above his head. So, this was the great Tao of the unfalling mountain. It was the great Tao, and now, this great Tao of the Emperor Realm would belong to him. Once he obtained the true Emperor Realm, he would become the most powerful existence in the world. At that time, all of his hatred would be repaid. The destroyed Li family would be reborn in his hands, becoming far more powerful than before. Father, do you see this? Your son has already obtained the opportunity to step onto the peak of the world. From today onwards, I will make the entire world crawl and tremble beneath my feet. Qin suddenly frowned and looked into the distance. Baiji had sharp senses. What happened? Niu Daodu looked over. Qin thought for a moment and said, "There was an accident. I'm considering whether or not I should intervene." Now that things had come to this, he could no longer conceal himself. Baiji was one of them. Niu Daodu trusted him completely. There was no point in acting coy anymore. Baiji frowned, dissatisfied with Qin Yu's half-truths. This made her feel even worse. He didn't say anything else. Niu Daodu was more attentive. "What is it? Tell me. Maybe I can help you think." Qin Yu took a deep breath and exhaled. "No need. I've thought it through." He looked at Baiji and said, "Continue in this direction, and you will soon encounter a man and a woman. The woman's name is Miaoya, and the man is a sword cultivator. Help them, and don't let anything happen to them. We'll be back soon. Baiji's eyes were cold. Qinyu said lightly, I think I've already made some things clear. You can refuse, but you'd better think about the consequences. Humph. Baiji coldly snorted. Her sword hummed, and she instantly flew far away. Niu Daodu shrunk her neck. Zhou Huan's sword is so powerful. Few sword cultivators I've met are sharper than her. So, you shouldn't provoke her too much or something might happen. Qinyu smiled. I'm not afraid. I have Miss Niu Daodu to protect me. She can't hurt me. Niu Daodu beamed with joy. She stuck out her chest. That's for sure. Sun Changqing is fierce, but he's still lost to me. Qinyu earnestly nodded. Let's go and save her. There are some things I still don't understand. I don't think I can let her be killed like this. The latter words were spoken in a soft voice, so Niu Daodu didn't hear them clearly. But she could feel Qinyu's complex mood and didn't say anything. The two changed directions. Qinyu grabbed Niu Daodu's hand and held away. I never thought there would be an inheritance of the abyss swallowing law. A calm voice sounded out in his ears, a hint of surprise in it. Chun Shanglu opened his eyes, revealing pitch-black pupils. He wasn't surprised by this voice. The true emperor of that clan didn't hide the news from him when he first spread the news. Perhaps he had already sensed it at that time. Patriarch, if I succeed today, I will leave the 13th tower and join that clan. With Li Ruhua included, all the disciples of the 13th tower besides him had been exterminated. This would inevitably arouse suspicion. He didn't have full confidence he could hide from the various tracking methods of the 13th tower. Escaping like this was the key. After all, even if he obtained the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain, it was impossible for him to immediately become a true sovereign with his current cultivation. He needed time to digest and absorb it. The patriarch smiled. Of course, I welcome you to join us. Chun Shanglu, I will remember your name. To be remembered by a true sovereign was a great honor. But at this moment, Chun Shanglu's expression was calm. Calm. This was because he had seen the great Tao and was confident he could seize it. At that time, with the great Tao in his hands, the true sovereign realm would follow. All he needed was a little bit of time. The true sovereign suddenly said, Chun Shanglu, let me give you a reminder. You should hurry up or you'll be in trouble. Chun Shanglu frowned. I asked the true sovereign to make a move and buy time for me. The true sovereign refused. I can sense the situation within Skyfall Mountain, but I have no way of interfering. Take care of yourself. He wasn't optimistic about Chun Shanglu's chances. The reason he spoke to him on his own initiative was only to make sure there was a possibility. If Chun Shanglu was killed in the end, that was fine too. If all his competitors died, then the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain would belong to that clan. This was the best result. Chun Shanglu's face darkened. Where did this trouble come from? All of the cultivators in the 13th floor had been killed, and those who had come before were scared out of their wits. Could it be that it came from Skyfall Mountain itself? Soon, Chun Shanglu discovered that no matter how much he thought about it, it was useless. Only by seeing it with his own eyes would he know the truth. Zhou Huan, Niu Daodu. The moment Chun Shanglu saw these two people, alarm bells sounded in his heart. He grabbed Li Ruhua's hand and used even more strength to swallow her up. Stop! I am helping the miss heal her wounds. If you dare to approach and cause something to happen to the miss, then you will be the enemy of the 13th tower. Niu Daodu hesitated. She looked at Qinyu. Qinyu had a calm expression. He lightly said, swallowing Li Ruhua is also helping her heal? Chun Shanglu, who are you trying to fool? He recognized me. He actually recognized me. Chun Shanglu's pupil shrank. Deep in his heart, an intense restlessness rose up, as if he had encountered a natural enemy. His mind trembled. Before this, he had thought of attacking him, but he never had the chance. How could he have imagined that this person already had thoughts about him? Otherwise, he wouldn't have called out his name. Who are you? Chun Shanglu angrily roared. The swallowing process had already been mostly completed. In another hour at most, he would be able to take everything from Li Ruhua. But something had happened at this critical moment. Chun Shanglu's heart was filled with hate. In particular, The Zhou Huan in front of him gave him a bad feeling. His heart was suppressed to the extreme, as if he were facing the tumbling black clouds in the skies. Qin Yu said, "Who I am isn't important. What's important is that you want to delay for time." The corners of his lips curled up in a mocking smile. "Dream on." Chen Shanglu roared out loud. Space instantly froze, and a terrifying suppressive strength erupted. Before this, Li Ruhua had used this move to kill the elder senior apprentice sister of the 13th floor. She had been caught off guard and had erupted in an attempt to end the two of them. When Chen Shanglu attacked, he had used his full strength. But what a pity, the target he chose today was Qin Yu. Before, Li Ruhua's feelings weren't wrong. This was because the great Tao that she saw and grasped wasn't something that belonged to her. Rather, through the connection between them, she borrowed Qin Yu's strength. This great Tao was his to begin with. Now, Chen Shanglu had used the abyss-swallowing law to plunder Li Ruhua's strength and barely obtained the qualifications to borrow the strength of the great Tao. But if he were to use the strength of the great Tao that he borrowed to deal with the true master of the great Tao, it would only be a joke to himself. Qin Yu didn't attack. The great Tao's annihilating strength erupted. As it approached him, it annihilated and dissipated. He looked at Chen Shanglu, his tone faint. "Now it's my turn." "Pa!" Qin Yu lifted a hand and snapped his fingers. Chapter 1743. In the next moment, everything within Skyfall Mountain was cut off from the outside world. The expression of the true emperor who had been spying on Mount Tianluo changed drastically. He discovered that his perception of Skyfall Mountain had been cut off. There was only one explanation for this. The great Tao of Skyfall Mountain had chosen a master. After a brief moment of anger, the true sovereign revealed a thoughtful expression. Gradually, excitement appeared in his eyes. Because of the eruption of the Tao accumulation, the entire Skyfall Mountain had become a mess. In order to compete for the ownership of the great Tao, cultivators from all over began slaughtering each other, including Li Ruhua. Everyone that was connected to the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain had fallen into trouble. They could no longer solve the great Tao in peace. And from beginning to end, the only ones that hadn't been disturbed were the 24 people of that clan. They had gathered together and worked together to solve the great Tao, and now they had succeeded. This was the most reasonable explanation that the true sovereign could think of, and it was also the result he was most willing to believe. But the matters of the world couldn't be changed by a single person's will. Not even a true sovereign could. He had to confirm it. Shua, the true sovereign's figure, instantly vanished. In the next moment, he arrived in the giant space beneath the city lord mansion. The 24 stone statues were covered in countless blood vessels. They wove together in the air, turning into blood-red eggshells that wrapped around the stone statues. Patriarch, the elder that had been guarding here, bowed. The true sovereign said, "I have lost my perception of the interior of Skyfall Mountain." The elder's complexion changed. Then he reacted. His eyes widened and excitement appeared on his face. Patriarch, the true sovereign nodded. "Right now, I don't have 100% confidence, but there is a high probability that this is the case." He closed his eyes, and his divine sense instantly spread out, covering the 24 stone statues. Soon, the true sovereign opened his eyes, a smile on his face. They succeeded. True sovereigns were all existences that had stepped onto the heavenly great Tao, so they could sense each other. Now, the true sovereign could feel the aura of the great Tao from the 24 stone statues in front of him. It was confirmed. The elder's face flushed red. He knelt to the ground and laughed into the heavens. "Ha ha! Ha ha! Good! The heavens haven't forsaken my clan. From today onwards, our race will have one more true emperor, and we will be able to suppress the world. Who would dare to covet it?" The true emperor also had a big smile on his face. He was glad that he had made the decision to abandon Mount Tianluo. It was fortunate that he had staked everything on a single throw, resulting in such an outcome. If he had continued to keep it in his hands, he might not have been able to obtain any results even after thousands or tens of thousands of years. However, he didn't know exactly who obtained the acknowledgement of the Grand Tao this time. 327. Indeed, among the younger generation, he was indeed the best, the one with the greatest possibility. But 480 isn't bad either. The true emperor of the clan had never felt so happy before. No matter who it was, the one who obtained the great Tao of Tianluo Mountain was a member of that clan. That was enough. Finally, in the Middle Wasteland, they could straighten their backs and speak. The battle with the Western Desolation over the broken world of the Southwest Desolation region had come to an end. Oof. One clan and two true emperors. How could Shi Huang not lower its head? Believe it or not, they can directly attack the imperial capital, unite the western wilderness, and overthrow the rule of Emperor Zhou. On Mount Tianluo, after Qin Yu snapped his fingers, Chun Shangled across from him trembled. Fear gushed out from the depths of his eyes. He suddenly discovered that he had already lost control of the great Tao. It was clearly in front of him, but it seemed so far away. It was unreachable. Qin Yu wasn't in the mood to waste time with Chun Shangled. He still had many things he needed to do. He flicked his sleeves. Space instantly twisted, sucking in Chun Shangled. No, I can't accept this. I won't. His howls came to an abrupt end. Space twisted and flattened, as if it had never appeared. Like this, Chun Shangled would forever vanish. In the end, a minor character would always be a minor character. Even if they were fated to become the bringer of the tide, they still couldn't escape their final fate. Putong, Li Ruhua paled. She seemed to have lost too much blood, and her aura was extremely weak. She fell to the ground. Niu Daodu looked at Qin Yu. The one you want to save is her? She subconsciously bit her lips. Qin Yu nodded. Miss Niu, there is no need to think too much about it. She and I do know each other, but our friendship isn't too deep. The only reason I saved her today is to resolve a doubt in my heart. As he spoke, he realized that there was no need to explain anything. He didn't have any reckless thoughts towards Niu Daodu. He, the old ox family, couldn't be provoked. But Niu Daodu was clearly overthinking things. After listening to Qin Yu's explanation, she said in a soft voice, I believe you. Qin Yu, what? You believe me again? No. He had to hurry and stay far away from Niu Daodu. If he stirred up trouble and the old ox family accused him of using her, then abandoning her, would he still be able to live? As he thought about the strong men of the ox family and then about Niu Dingtian, his heart trembled. Luckily, the matter of Skyfall Mountain was about to come to an end. Cough. I'll have to trouble Miss Niu to take care of her for the time being. Niu Daodu nodded. She pulled Li Ruhua into the range of the void bead. She looked at her chest, and then at herself, her smile becoming increasingly bright. She was big. Qin Yu's lips twitched. He pretended not to see. Let's go. There might be problems if Baiji goes alone to save her. Okay, outside Skyfall Mountain, within the 13th tower, the martial sovereign no longer cared about the true sovereign's warning. That clan, nearly all of my tower's disciples have died. We will definitely investigate this matter to the end. You true sovereigns look down on my boundary, but my 13th tower also has more than one true sovereign. He took out a talisman. With a flick of his finger, it ignited and turned to ashes. He bowed and respectfully said, I ask the true sovereign to descend and uphold justice for the disciples of my 13th tower. Bang! Space shattered in the skies. A giant vortex appeared out of thin air. It rumbled as it revolved, setting off a heaven-shaking momentum. A figure stepped out from the vortex. He wore black robes and held a white jade horsetail whisk in his hands. Divine light surged in his eyes, as if there were 4 moons and rivers of stars swirling within them. I already know of this matter. I have come on the orders of the Tower Master to demand an explanation. The Taoist slowly spoke. Each word was like an explosion of thunder, reverberating through the world. On the ground, the complexions of the cultivators responsible for maintaining order changed. They revealed pained expressions. Bang, bang, bang. Heads exploded on the spot. Then, their bodies disintegrated turning into blood energy that howled away. That clan had no name, no surname, no roots, no roots. They didn't belong to the 5 elements of the 3 realms. They had jumped out of samsara. To them, death was also a new life. This was a nearly eternal and indestructible state, an incomplete state of being a long-lived species. Of course, everything in this world came with a price. In order to obtain this sort of undying and indestructible ability, what survived were the mortal body and soul. But their consciousness was constantly destroyed and reborn. That clan was still the same clan, still upholding their original aspirations. But besides the true sovereign patriarch and a small number of powerful elders, how many people were still the same as before? This was the sorrow of that clan. It was also the driving force behind their desperate desire to change their destiny. No one hoped that as they lived, they would become someone else. Bang, space shook. Like a giant stone falling into the sea, a towering figure arrived in time once more. The true sovereign of that clan was enraged. Cheongji, if you dare to touch my clansmen again, I will not let this matter rest. The Taoist named Cheongji, who wore black robes and held a white jade whisk, had a faint look in his eyes. I would like to know just why the patriarch will not let this matter rest. He stepped forwards. With a loud rumble, the world surged and a wild aura shook the world. The patriarch didn't take a single step back. The auras of the 2 true sovereigns were like 2 towering mountains that collided together. In that instant, a destructive strength was released that swept out in all directions. The scene in front of them surpassed everyone's expectations. First, they didn't think that the one that came from the 13th tower would be the one with the heaviest, murderous nature, Cheongji. As soon as he arrived, he killed so many cultivators of that clan. Second, they didn't think that the patriarch would be so forceful today, directly confronting Cheongji. A great battle between true sovereigns was about to begin. Once again, this wasn't the right time. If it were somewhere else, the true sovereigns present would love nothing more than to see them shed a mouthful of hair. They wouldn't care, even if their heads were broken. But now, Tianluo Mountain was right in front of them. Niuding Tian suddenly took a step forward. Like an axe that could split open the sky, he slashed down and forcefully thrust into the 2's auras. If you want to fight, no problem. You can go to the sky, beyond heaven, or somewhere else. But not here. His tone was resolute and sonorous. With the powerful aura of 1 against 2, no one dared to ignore Niu Dingtian's attitude, especially after they suspected that he had reached the peak of the great Tao Emperor realm. That's right. The 2 of you should restrain yourselves. Don't ruin the opportunities of the juniors. Fellow Taoist Cheongji, the Tower Master called you here today to investigate the truth, not to provoke a battle between true sovereigns. There are opportunities of the great Tao in Tianluo Mountain. Naturally, there are hidden dangers. Once you enter, it will be up to fate. How can we cause trouble for you? The projections of the true sovereigns expressed their attitudes. Cheongji sneered, and his eyes fell on Niu Dingtian. I don't think you had enough of the previous battle. When this matter is over, I will ask the Tower Master for permission to fight you. Niu Dingtian's expression was calm. Sure. His tone was extremely calm. The clan leader took a step back, his face expressionless. Cheongji, I will not let you off the hook for killing my clansmen. What? Everyone looked over. They suddenly felt that the clan leader was very confident at this moment. They were all old and shrewd characters. How could they not notice that something was amiss? Now, their eyes were filled with surprise. Could it be that the great Tao in Tianluo Mountain had been obtained by that clan? After all, if it was just a mere Emperor Realm cultivator of 300 years, how could he have such confidence? Niu Dingtian was unperturbed. He didn't care about any of this. He sneered inwardly. He didn't know if the clan leader had gone mad or something. He dared to openly challenge the 13th tower, but the great Tao in Tianluo Mountain, humph, he could forget about it, because Little Meat had arrived. Although Niu Dingtian didn't know what the once perfect immortal species and the amazing young man were planning and what they were secretly planning. Niu Tian didn't know at all. But since Little Meat had made a move, there was no chance of a fluke. That clan absolutely couldn't escape her schemes. Losing one's wife and one's soldiers was probably the lightest punishment. Perhaps they would even be tricked and suffer a great loss. Chapter 1744. Niu Tian's guess was quite accurate. However, he had underestimated one thing. Not only had Little Meaty set up a trap in Heavenfall Mountain, but Qin Yu had also added insult to injury. He did not mind completely exterminating that clan. Now, the true emperor's perception of the situation in Mount Tianluo had been cut off. The cultivators of that clan naturally couldn't do anything about it. After receiving his reminder, the long-awaited drama was finally about to begin. However, there was still time. He might as well have the 24 people of that clan help Qin Yu unseal his great Tao. He had to find Baiji and Miaoya first. As for that sword cultivator, Qin Yu was curious. Just what was the relationship between him and that sword cultivator? Big brother Wei, leave by yourself. I can't escape. Miaoya's face was pale, and there was still blood at the corner of his mouth. Previously, the two of them had already escaped from danger. It was she who didn't know the severity of the situation and sent out a distress signal. In the end, the three cultivators who were also disciples of the Black Marsh tribe tried to kill the two of them. Even though he was beaten back by Wei Han, he was also seriously injured. He was being chased by a group of cultivators, and the situation was becoming worse and worse. Miaoya knew that everything was her fault, and her heart was filled with regret. How dare these people attack her? Were they not afraid of being investigated by the sect if word of this got out? Wei Han slashed out with his sword, sending a cultivator who tried to sneak up on him flying. He didn't even turn around, leaving her with a solid back view. It has nothing to do with you. It's the people of this world that are evil. He had originally thought that after what had happened in the past, his heart had already calmed down. But in Tianluo Mountain, he met Miaoya, a girl who was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. In other people's eyes, she was 80 points, but in his eyes, 120 points. Don't worry, I will definitely bring you out alive. Miaoya teared up. Loud laughter suddenly rang out. It's a small world. Wei Han, it's really you. Whoosh, whoosh, the three sword cultivators whistled through the air. The powerful and sharp aura caused people's hearts to palpitate. The people surrounding him all retreated with fear on their faces. One of them laughed heartily as he stared at Wei Han with an amused look in his eyes. Zheng Chu. Wei Han let out a low growl as his killing intent erupted. Formless sword qi burst out of his body, causing cracks to appear in the space. The memories that had been sealed in the deepest recesses of his mind, memories that he didn't want to recall, now surged, causing his eyes to quickly turn red. The three sword cultivators frowned slightly before regaining their composure. He had some strength, but that was all. This was the vision and pride of a disciple of the Sword Dao family. Junior brother Zheng, do you know this person? Zheng Chu smiled faintly. Long ago, there was a grudge between them. His cultivation was crippled, and he was expelled. I didn't expect that he would live to this day. He was smiling, but his eyes were cold, and his heart was filled with killing intent. To think that a cripple would actually possess such frightening strength. Just now, when he was locked on by the blood-red eye, his heart pounded and he instinctively felt fear. The intuition of a sword cultivator was usually very accurate. This meant that Wei Han had the ability to threaten him today. Such a Wei Han naturally deserved to die. If you don't remove the roots when cutting weeds, they will grow again when the spring wind blows. Junior apprentice brother Zheng is just in time to end this hidden danger. The man smiled. I am willing to lend junior apprentice brother a hand. Thank you, senior brother. Zheng Chu lifted his hand and his sword hummed. Wei Han, let me see what methods you have now. Wei Han roared out loud and pushed Miaoya away. Hurry and run. Previously, he had risked his life to protect Miaoya. But when Zheng Chu appeared, everything changed. He knew that he couldn't escape today. If Miao continued to stay by his side, she would only be killed. Zheng Chu said, "Senior apprentice brother, I will kill Wei Han myself. Please leave this woman behind." Okay. The man lifted his sword. Wherever the sword pointed, space suddenly twisted. Miaoya, who was pushed away, revealed a look of despair. She was already severely injured, and without Wei Han's protection, she couldn't avoid this sword. "No!" Wei Han shouted out loud. He desperately tried to rush over, but Zheng Chu was already blocking him. He smiled. "Back then, I wanted you to kneel on the ground and watch me personally kill your teacher and junior apprentice sister. Today, I will let you watch this woman die with your own eyes. Wei Han, I am destined to be your nightmare for the rest of your life. Don't even think about escaping. I will kill you." Wei Han roared out loud. He slashed out with his sword. Zheng Chu's sword collided with his. Two powerful sword cultivators fought with their lives on the line. Terrifying sword breaths splashed out, instantly tearing apart the earth. But his sword couldn't kill Zheng Chu. If he couldn't kill him, he naturally couldn't save Miaoya. Wei Han's eyes turned blood red. His heart was filled with anger and despair. At this moment, a sword hummed. The sword that slashed at Miaoya was cut in half. With a mournful wail, it disintegrated. Who? The sword cultivator was shocked and angry. Shua, Bai Ji's figure landed. She glanced over. "You are Miaoya?" Miaoya, who had just escaped death, hurriedly nodded. And she was right. Bai Ji said, "Stand behind me." After speaking, she stepped forward. Whoosh, a sword hummed. The sword cultivator that killed Miaoya landed in front of her. Japanese Wang family's disciple, Wang Shanqi, greets Fairy Maiden. "May I ask which sect Fairy Maiden comes from? I am willing to prepare a generous gift for the old ancestor to personally propose marriage." He had taken a liking to this female sword cultivator at first glance. Bai Ji frowned. She raised her sword and slashed. Wang Shanqi's expression changed. He suddenly raised his sword, but he was still a bit too slow. A trace of blood appeared on the corner of his eyebrows. He was shocked and angry. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Fairy Maiden, you are too arrogant. Is the disciple of the Japanese Wang family not worthy of you?" Bai Ji raised her hand and slashed again. This sword was heavier than before. The moment the sword hummed, Wang Shanqi's pupils shrank. He was shocked and angry. He didn't expect that the woman in front of him had held back in the previous two attacks. With a loud bellow, Wang Shanqi wielded his sword with both hands and heavily pierced out. This sword strike had the aura of a surging river flowing east, exuding an extraordinary aura. This was none other than the river sword art of the Wang clan, an aristocratic clan of swordsmen. The two sword breaths were as fast as lightning. They instantly collided. Wang Shanqi was sent flying. Blood flowed from his mouth and nose, and his face was pale. His hands that held the sword trembled slightly. This sword almost sent the immortal sword in his hand flying. If that was really the case, it would be a great humiliation for sword cultivators. There was no need to mention the marriage proposal anymore. "Do it, kill her!" Wang Shanqi roared angrily. The other sword cultivator from the Wang family joined the battle without any hesitation. Wang Shanqi was one of the most valued sons of the current Wang family patriarch. Protecting Wang Shanqi's safety was Miao Yijian's most important task in entering Mount Tianluo. He was sent by the Japanese Wang family to protect an important son of the Wang family. He was very powerful. In fact, in the awkward situation where there were no martial emperors in the world, Miao Yijian's peak sovereign realm strength was only slightly weaker than the Wang family patriarch. Of course, just like the Jin family, who had the heaven-splitting sword, the Wang family also had the peerless Great River sword. The Wang family patriarch could fight against a half-step martial emperor. He couldn't compare. But now, after entering Mount Tianluo, Miao Yijian was bestowed a powerful immortal sword by the Wang family. It was very compatible with the sword art he cultivated, allowing him to burst out with unparalleled battle strength. Bai Ji soon felt the pressure. But what she didn't know was that Miao Yijian was even more surprised. He He didn't know when a peak sovereign realm female sword cultivator had appeared in the world. Earth realm. Compared to him, she was only slightly weaker. And what made Miao Yijian even more jealous was that Bai Ji's sword aura was vast and majestic, like the rising sun, full of vitality and endless vitality. Unlike his sword aura, which seemed perfect and flawless, it was old and lost the possibility of improvement when cultivated to the peak. In this life, his sword cultivation had reached the limit, and it was impossible for him to break through the heavenly being door. And this was undoubtedly the greatest tragedy for a sword cultivator who had reached the human realm. Miao Yijian, kill her! Wang Shangqi roared angrily. At this moment, the people who had retreated were eager to try again, and their eyes were all focused on Miaoya. Wei Han was powerful, and now he was fighting with Zheng Chu. It was not easy to interfere in a battle between two great sword cultivators. If they were not careful, they would be caught in the crossfire. It was more reliable to kill Miaoya. Although Bai Ji was powerful, Miao Yijian was not weak either. The two of them were fighting, and Miaoya could only keep retreating. Just a little more, and she would be able to attack soon. Miaoya sensed the cold gazes from all around and the dangerous aura they exuded. But she had no choice. The aftermath of the battle in front of her forced her to keep retreating, or she would be caught in it. Do it! Capture this woman. She has the secret of the Tianluo Mountain Dao. Everyone who had been waiting for an opportunity attacked almost at the same time. Bai Ji frowned. Miao Yijian, who was opposite her, attacked even faster, forcing her to be unable to save her. But at this moment, there were people who were faster than them, and the cultivators who rushed towards Miao, you were all sent flying. One of them even had his chest pierced by a punch, and when he fell to the ground, he was no longer breathing. Could it be that they are here to save me again? It was just like what happened to Baiji. But unfortunately, that was not the case. Just as Miaoya thought about it, someone grabbed her neck. Go! The three of them rushed into the sky. The people who were beaten back were full of anger and unwillingness, but no one dared to stop them. That was because the three people who had attacked were simply too powerful. One punch killed one person on the spot. The one who was killed was not a nobody, and his strength was almost on par with theirs. Damn it! Since when were there three people with such fierce strength in Tianluo Mountain? Moreover, they were unfamiliar faces. Miaoya! Wei Han shouted, and his sword moved even faster. But not only did he fail to force Zheng Chu to retreat, but he was also stabbed, and his clothes were soaked with blood. Zheng Chu sneered. You dare to be distracted while fighting with me? You're courting death. But that woman is not bad-looking. Now that she has fallen into the hands of three men, it's hard to say what will happen next. Wei Han roared from the depths of his throat. I'll kill you. Zheng Chu laughed. If you have the strength, do as you please. On the other side, Miao Yijian was expressionless, and his eyes were cold. Woman, your opponent today is me. He used the scattered sword technique, and the sword breath was like rain, covering every inch of the space, sealing Bai Ji inside. Chapter 1745. The three men who captured Miaoya were all dressed in black. They were silent as they ran, and their auras were as cold as stone. Miaoya, who was held by the neck, felt the coldness in their palms. She felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Her intuition told her that she would not be able to escape this time. Wei Han, she closed her eyes. Right at this moment, the three of them suddenly stopped in their tracks. Although it is a bit presumptuous to say this, she is one of us. Can you return her to us? One man, two women. It was a strange combination. In particular, one of the women was still unconscious and being carried by another woman. The one who spoke was Qinyu. He looked at one of the men in black and sighed inwardly. It was really a small world. There were bad karma everywhere. This person was none other than the man he had met on the ferry, the man he had sized up before entering the Heavenfall Mountains. It's you. The other party spoke. He remembered him. Sure enough, his previous observation had been noticed. Qin thought for a moment and said, "You three, I have no intention of becoming enemies with the ancient remnant race. Return her to me, and I will let this matter go." The expressions of the three people changed drastically. The man in black stepped forward. Qin sighed inwardly. He had directly pointed out his identity. This was an invisible threat trying to make the three people back down. Obviously, his plan had failed. There was no way to settle this peacefully today. Qin stretched out his hand and pulled Niu Dodu, saying, "Look after her. Leave the rest to me." He could not let Niu Dodu take action. Otherwise, the Niu family would have another great enemy. Although the ancient remnant race was now being chased by the great Qin dynasty, their strength could not be underestimated. Sometimes it was necessary to trick one's teammates, but it also depended on the situation. Not now. Qin wanted to save people. This was his own matter. He could not involve the Niu family. Moreover, old Niu was very scary. Niu Dingtian was not easy to fool. It was better to bear the responsibility himself. He took a step forward, instantly appearing beside the black-clothed man. He punched out. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the black-clothed man was sent flying. His body plowed through the ground, creating a long crack. Qin frowned. Beyond his expectations, this person's combat strength hadn't been knocked away by his fist. He swayed and stood up. His eyes locked onto Qin. "The great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. So it was you who obtained it." The air suddenly fell silent. Niu Daodu's eyes widened, but when she thought about it seriously, it seemed that Zhou Huan had stopped hiding this matter from the moment she saved Li Ruhua. It was just that she didn't think too much about it, or rather, she didn't want to think too much. The eyes of the other two black-clothed men became scorching hot, and their breathing became heavier. "Are you sure?" one of them said. The person fighting with Qin nodded. "I am." Bang! Miaoyu was flung away. Their only goal was the Great Path in Tianluo Mountain. Since they had found a master, they naturally had no interest in anyone else. However, when they pushed Miaoyu away, it was obvious that the person who grabbed her did not want her to continue living. He used a lot of force. Although Qin thoughts moved, and he helped her offset most of the strength, Miaoyu still tumbled backwards several times and vomited great mouthfuls of blood. "Do it! Kill him! The Great Path is ours." The three black-clothed men grabbed their hair and tore it apart. Zila, their skin was directly torn off, revealing black flesh and blood. Now, as their skin trembled, fine scales began to appear, covering every inch of their bodies. At the same time, crackling sounds of bones filled the air. The three people rapidly grew, reaching over 10 feet in the blink of an eye. These were the true bodies of the ancient remnants. Bang, 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 the ground cracked open. The three ancient remnants rushed forwards at the same time, their speed faster than lightning. Qin lifted a hand and grasped it in front of him. The space in front of him instantly froze. Like an invisible swamp, it covered them all. Agudu Hadolii mulberry. The three ancient remnants began to utter strange syllables at the same time. The space that trapped them began to shake. The three of them soon regained their ability to move. Niu Daodu loudly shouted, "Zhou Huan, be careful. This is the chaos curse of the ancient remnants. It can even threaten a true sovereign." Chaos curse? Qin took a step back, avoiding the sharp claws. But at this time, his complexion changed. His foot that was about to land abruptly deviated from its original position and moved half a step to the left. In the next moment, there was the sound of howling wind in his ears. Several strands of hair fell in front of him. Just a little bit more. Just now. If it weren't for him promptly sensing that something was wrong, his entire head would have been smashed to smithereens by that claw. This was the ability of the Chaos Curse. It could interfere with a cultivator's sense and control the rules of the outside world, causing everything to fall into a state of chaos. Only the bloodline of the ancient remnants wouldn't be affected. No wonder they still dared to attack Qin even though they knew he had grasped a portion of the Skyfall Mountain Great Tao. The three ancient remnants didn't pause at all. They rushed forwards once more. The low roars of the chaos curse continued to echo in his ears. Moreover, it became increasingly fast, giving off a stifling feeling. Chinyu was incomparably cautious. But in the following short period of time, he encountered dangers again and again, barely managing to avoid them each time. A gash was torn open on his chest, but he didn't feel any pain. Instead, he felt a faint numbness. Poison. Across from him, the ancient remnant that succeeded placed the black claw in his mouth and gently licked it. His eyes brightened. You taste very good. I will slowly eat you up. Just as Neo Doubta moved, Chinyu raised a hand to stop her. He didn't turn his head. Don't interfere in this matter. An ancient remnant roared. That's right, Neo Doubta. Don't think that you could be fearless just because you are wearing the great Tao's golden armor. My race's chaos curse is enough to tear it apart bit by bit. Neo Dingtian might be strong, but since he has offended the saints, all that awaits him is death. Hurry up and scram. Don't provoke trouble for yourself. Neo Doubta clenched her teeth. But before she could speak, Chinyu smiled. You three, you seem to be too optimistic. If I didn't have some real methods, would I dare to come to Skyfall Mountain? I'll let you leave because I didn't want to form enmity with the ancient remnants. But now, it seems that there is a reason why you have fallen to such a state. He tapped his forehead. Do you see? Brains, they lack brains. Kill him. With angry roars, the three ancient remnants rushed forwards. Chinyu lifted a hand and grasped forwards. The suppressive strength of the great Tao descended. Across from him, the eyes of the three ancient remnants revealed a mocking and awe-inspiring look. To others, the suppression of a true sovereign's great Tao was incomprehensible. But the saints had never feared it. The person in front of them only had big words, and his methods were the same as before. Next, they would tear him to pieces and swallow up the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain. Hum! The cry of a sword echoed in her ears. Neo Doubta cried out and subconsciously closed her eyes. Even so, she couldn't help but tear up. Her eyes felt sore and swollen. Her ears fell silent. The hurried, strange, and chaotic incantations disappeared. She rubbed her eyes and endured the discomfort to open them. She saw Chinyu carrying the unconscious Miaoya as he walked towards them, and she could no longer see the figures of those three ancient remnants. They had vanished into thin air, as if they had never appeared. Dead? Neo Doubta's face was filled with disbelief. Chinyu nodded. Neo Doubta looked at him, speechless. Chinyu coughed. Before, I didn't mean to hide behind you. It wasn't convenient for me to do anything at the time. I could only do so not too long ago. Neo Doubta said, I believe you. She stared at Chinyu. Did you really obtain the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain? This was a bit awkward. No matter how it was said, this was partly due to Miss Neo's efforts. Chinyu thought for a moment. I didn't completely obtain it, but most of it, that's right, it is my great Tao. Things had already come this far, and he still had to hide it. He was looking down on himself. Neo Doubta patted his shoulder. Zhou Huan, you are too fierce. With so many people fighting over it and fighting to the death, you actually managed to take advantage of it. She suddenly frowned. No, that's not what you said at the start. You even said that I was the one who caused the changes in Skyfall Mountain. Chinyu had an awkward expression. He was thinking about how to explain. Neo Doubta waved her hand. Don't say anything. Remember that you owe me a great favor. You will have to return it in the future. Chinyu earnestly nodded. Of course. He looked at Neo Doubta and smiled. This was because after this girl learned that the great Tao belonged to someone else, she didn't seem surprised at all. Instead, she exuded a heartfelt happiness for him. Neo Doubta was truly a good girl. He had no idea just which boy she would end up with in the future. Thinking about it, although she was a bit pure and didn't have many thoughts, she definitely wouldn't suffer a loss. What nonsense! With the old cow's family's lineup, after marrying Neo Doubta, even if they ate the heart of a bear or the gall of a leopard, they still wouldn't dare to be rude to her. That was just seeking death. He picked up another woman who was also unconscious. Luckily, Neo Doubta was here. Otherwise, Qin Yu would never have been able to explain himself. Let's go. Let's hurry up and gather everyone. We still have official business to attend to. Qin Yu impatiently delivered a great gift to that clan. He grabbed Niu Daodu and stepped forwards. The group instantly vanished from sight. As he unraveled more and more of his Dao, the connection between Qin Yu and Skyfall Mountain became even closer. Using spatial shifting was also a matter of course. Baiji was annoyed. She didn't care about Qin Yu, but she was annoyed that she couldn't even handle such a small matter. Once this news reached the madam's ears, she would definitely feel that she was useless. Would she be willing to let her go back? Thinking of this, she moved her sword even faster. She hated that she couldn't chop Miao Yijian into meat paste. Wang Shanqi's face was full of anger. Miao Yijian, hurry up and take her down, or I won't forgive you. Miao Yijian frowned, a cold light flashing in his eyes. If not for the Wang family's great kindness, and the Wang family's old ancestor's strength was indeed terrifying, he would have killed Wang Shanqi with a single sword strike. He hated that he could not kill Wang Shanqi with a single sword strike. How dare a piece of trash give him orders in front of him? Humph! He coldly snorted, venting his anger on Baiji. Little girl, today I'll let you experience the methods of a peak sword cultivator. Boom! His aura crazily rose at this moment. The sword breath that rained down from the sky suddenly became fierce. Experts who were stuck at the peak of the sovereign realm and had stepped into the mortal realm were unable to break through the threshold of the Deva realm. Miao Yijian naturally wouldn't waste time, so he researched a method that could greatly increase his combat strength in a short period of time. Baiji's complexion changed. In an instant, her dress was cut open with dozens of tears. Blood gushed out. Miao Yijian's attacks were bold and decisive, a complete change from his previous mellow and flawless style. He forcefully put Baiji at a disadvantage. On the other side, Zheng Chu relaxed. He smiled. Wei Han, why haven't you died yet? Why bother holding on? Just stick out your head and I'll cut it down. Isn't that easy? Across from him, Wei Han was bathed in blood. His aura was chaotic, and he could only hold on under the suppression of the sword breath. He was on the verge of collapse. Hearing this, his blood-red eyes flashed. Even if I die, I will drag you down with me. Zheng Chu laughed. Good ambition, but I'm afraid you won't have the chance. Who said I won't have the chance? With the sound of breaking air, Qin Yu and Niu Daoda brought the unconsciously Ruhua and Miao Yi flying over from the distance. Wei Han's eyes widened. He slashed out with his sword, completely risking his life to forcefully force Zheng Chu to draw back. Of course, this was also because Zheng Chu didn't dare to forcefully stop Qin Yu and the others who had suddenly appeared. Whoosh! Wei Han appeared in front of Qin Yu. He stubbornly stared at Miao Yi, who was standing beside Niu Daodu. She's still alive, Qin Yu lightly said. Wei Han let out a long breath. It was a very long breath. It was as if he had swallowed all the depression and despair in his heart. Just now, he had really thought of dying here. It was only his intense hatred that had supported him until this moment. Miao Yi was still alive. As his heart relaxed, his legs buckled, and he half knelt on the ground. Qin Yu, he thought for a moment and said, I accept your kneel. I will help you settle today's grudge. Chapter 1746. Some people were enemies the moment they opened their mouths. For instance, Qin Yu today. Zheng Chu coldly sneered. Help him settle his grudge? You might as well die in his place. He leapt forwards and slashed out with his sword. This sword strike was even stronger than the one that erupted when he fought with Wei Han. He had used his full strength without holding anything back. This sword strike was originally prepared to erupt when he killed Wei Han. His goal was to avoid being dragged down to the grave by Wei Han. If a formidable sword cultivator harbored the will to die, they would be a terrifying existence. But now, Zheng Chu didn't dare to hide anymore. He didn't know who Qin Yu was, but he could feel a dangerous aura coming from him. The most straightforward evidence was that the three men who had just captured Miaoyu were now missing, and Miaoyu was in their hands. From this, it wasn't difficult to make some logical guesses. How could Zheng Chu dare to hold back? This sword strike was vast and mighty. It was also the Japanese Wang family's river sword art, but it was almost twice as strong as Wang Shanqi's. He could hear the roar of a river in his ears. With a loud rumble, his momentum soared to the heavens. For so many years, Zheng Chu had been hiding his true strength. As for the reason, he was an outsider, yet he was better at practicing the Wang family's direct sword technique. What did he want? But unfortunately, this didn't have any meaning to Qin Yu. Zheng Chu wasn't an ancient remnant. He didn't have a chaos curse that could break through the suppression of the great Tao. To him, the only good news was that Qin Yu didn't plan on exposing the fact that he grasped the great Tao in front of everyone. So, he could die with a bit more dignity. That's right, Zheng Chu was going to die. Good news couldn't change this outcome. Qin Yu stepped forwards. Space twisted, sucking him and Zheng Chu in. In the next moment, a heaven-shaking sword cry echoed out from the distorted space. Zheng Chu screamed, "You are also a sword cultivator." After several breaths of time, the sword cry came to an abrupt end. The spatial distortion faded away. Qin Yu's original appearance was restored. With a loud bang, Zheng Chu fell into the ground. Blood flowed out from all over his body. Looking at his twisted body, it was unknown how many sword wounds had cut through his muscles and bones. "I thought you would be willing to kill him with your own hands, so I left him alive." Wei Han struggled to stand up. He walked to Zheng Chu's side, his eyes wide with fear. "No, don't." Puff. The sword in his hand fell, and a large head was cut off. Hot blood spurted out a few feet away. Wei Han lowered his head and looked at the rolling heads. His eyes were serious and persistent, as if he was admiring an exquisite work of art. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he turned in front of Qin Yu and fell to his knees, kowtowing. "No matter who you are, I, Wei Han, owe you a great favor. In the future, no matter what it is, so long as you ask, I will definitely not refuse." Qin Yu thought to himself, this young man's words aren't small, but your life might not even be yours anymore. Do you really think you could decide everything for yourself? However, gratitude was a virtue. He nodded and glanced at Niu Daodu. Niu Daodu placed Miaoyu in front of him. "Her injuries are quite serious, but I've already given her medicine. She'll be fine." Wei Han nodded. "Thank you, miss." He got up and hugged her tightly. He couldn't do this kind of thing too much, as it was easy to get beaten up. Qin Yu's lips twitched. He turned to look at Baiji. "Do you need help?" Baiji's face was cold. "No need." Qin Yu said, "Oh." When Miao Yijian attacked, his body suddenly froze. He could only watch helplessly as the blade pierced through his throat. Blood instantly gushed out. Baiji angrily roared, "Zhou Huan." Qin Yu raised his hands. "I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. How could I have so much time? Let's see how stubborn you are. In any case, there's no evidence and you can't beat me. Efficiency first." Wang Shanqi's face was pale and his face was full of fear. He didn't run because he knew that it was impossible to escape. "I am a direct descendant of the Japanese Wang family. If you dare to kill me," puff, Baiji cut off his head with her sword. Her eyes were cold as she stared at Qin Yu. This woman was really violent. Niu Daodu was better. Gentle girls were the cuter ones. Qin Yu lightly coughed. His eyes swept around. Just as he was about to retreat, he suddenly said, "Everyone, don't worry. Although you made some mistakes before, I have never liked killing people." Everyone. Zheng Chu was the first to die, followed by Miao Yijian and then Wang Shanqi. The Japanese Wang family was one of the rare swordsmanship families in the world. None of the three had managed to escape. Now you say such words? Like hell I'll believe you. Not only did they not stop, but they retreated even faster. Their eyes were filled with fear and dread. There was nothing they could do. They could only use their ultimate move. Qin Yu raised a hand and shouted, "Do you want to seize the great Tao of Skyfall Mountain?" The air suddenly fell silent. The retreating crowd subconsciously stopped. This was the original sin of greed. If everyone knew how to be content and knew when to advance and retreat, there would be far fewer deaths. Qin Yu continued, I have already discovered the conspiracy of that clan. Yes, it is them. Everyone. Do you think that the sudden eruption of their Tao means that the great Tao is about to recognize a master, and that clan will not be moved? This is absolutely impossible. But until now, I can guarantee that no one here has encountered a single cultivator from that clan in Skyfall Mountain. What do you think is the reason? Everyone's complexion changed. Qin Yu didn't give them time to think. He clapped his hands together. That's right. That is because as you and I are crazily slaughtering each other and fighting for the Tao, the cultivators of that clan are secretly gathering in one place and secretly plotting to seize the great Tao. Is this true? A cultivator frowned and shouted out. Qin Yu nodded. Of course. I have already discovered where they are. As long as you follow me, the truth will naturally be revealed. Why should we believe you? And if you really discovered something like this, why are you telling us? Another person spoke up, his face full of vigilance. Brat, you are quite cautious, but I won't play with you. Qin Yu had no expression. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. When the great Tao falls into the hands of that clan, don't regret it. As for why I'm telling you, it is because we do not have full confidence that we can resist that clan alone. We can only unite everyone's strength. You can tell this matter to anyone you trust and guide them here with us. As long as there are enough people, I don't think you need to fear that we will plot against you. This was the truth. No matter how strong Qin Yu and Baiji were, it was impossible for them to fight 100 people alone. And in Skyfall Mountain, there are far more than several thousand people fighting for the great Tao. Some people were still hesitating, but others had already begun to move. The news spread out with all sorts of methods at the fastest possible speed. Qin Yu turned and walked away. If you are willing to follow me, then follow me from afar. I will personally expose that clan's plot. Baiji leaned over. She coldly said, Just what do you want to do? Qin Yu smiled. I want to do something that makes me happy. He glanced at her and lifted a hand. Don't worry, I won't delay the madam's arrangements. Baiji turned and drew back. As he thought, bringing up Misty was the best way to deal with her. This woman had likely lost her mind. She actually dared to have such improper thoughts towards Misty. It really wasn't easy for her to live until now. Wei Han thought for a moment, and then picked up Miaoya and followed. He didn't know what Qin Yu was doing. However, the other party had saved his life and even helped him take revenge. Naturally, he couldn't just leave like that. Niu Daodu whispered, Zhou Huan, the old ancestor, told me that the clan is a bunch of mad dogs. The consequences of provoking them are severe, so no matter what you want to do, you must think carefully. Qin Yu glanced at her. Thank you for the reminder, Miss Niu. Between him and that clan, it was either you die or I live. There was no need to consider it at all. Seeing his firm attitude, Niu Daodu didn't say anything else. She only thought that if Qin Yu obtained the great Tao, he would also become a true sovereign in the future. Including the old ancestor, there would be 2 true emperors. If she cultivated diligently, it wouldn't be too difficult for her to become a true emperor on her own. With 3 true sovereigns working together, even if they offended that race, there was no need to fear them. Thinking of this, Niu Daodu's heart immediately calmed down. However, not long after she calmed down, her face suddenly turned slightly red. She peeked at Qin Yu. Luckily, he hadn't noticed. Otherwise, he would have died of embarrassment. On the other side, Qin Yu was expressionless. A bead of cold sweat dripped down his temples. No, he had to end the Skyfall Mountain incident as soon as possible and then run as far away as he could. It would be best if the identity of Zhou Huan vanished into thin air. Niu Daodu was far too naive. She simply couldn't understand the concept of Skyfall Mountain, and the majority of the great Tao was already in Qin Yu's hands. Even without looking back, he could clearly sense what was happening around him. Moreover, she had even peeked at him with a guilty conscience. Qin Yu didn't need to ask to know what Niu Daodu was thinking. This was far too dangerous. She was the beloved daughter of the old cow family. He really didn't dare to provoke her. Otherwise, if he wasn't careful, he might really die. As his thoughts raced, Qin Yu subconsciously sped up a bit, and as time passed, the group behind him grew larger and larger. He didn't dare to say that all the cultivators of Skyfall Mountain had gathered here, but there was at least a fifth of them, perhaps even more. This was already enough. After all, Skyfall Mountain was a world of its own, and its scope was massive. The cultivators that entered were scattered all over. For so many people to gather here in such a short period of time, the results were even better than expected. Of course, in the end, this was all because of everyone's selfishness. Qin Yu had used seizing the Great Tao as bait, so who could resist taking the bait? Shua. Qin Yu stopped. He looked back at the crowd and lifted a hand. Everyone, we've arrived. In front of them was a barren canyon. The ground was dark red, and there was no vegetation at all. As the wind blew past, a layer of dirt was lifted up. Everyone looked up, and gloomy expressions appeared on their faces. There was nothing at all. This fellow, was he playing with them? He was courting death. Zhou Huan, where are the cultivators of that clan you spoke of? If we can't find them, you will be the first to suffer. You wasted our precious time. You deserve to die. Everyone was riled up and gnashed their teeth. Qin Yu had a calm expression. He lightly said, "Everyone, please calm down. Take a look." With a thought, the power of the Great Tao arrived. Kacha! With a cracking sound, space twisted and the canyon in front of them suddenly changed. An altar built from red boulders appeared in front of everyone. From all directions, countless Tao accumulations crazily gathered towards it. 24 cultivators of that clan were sitting cross-legged. Above each of their heads was a blood-red stone phantom. These phantom roared towards the heavens as they swallowed up the Tao accumulations. Chapter 1747. Needless to say, the truth was right before their eyes. Outside the canyon, the cultivators gathered here had ashen faces, and their eyes were filled with hatred. That damn clan! Zhou Huan's accusation was confirmed. They fought to the death for the Tao, but the 24 people of that clan hid here peacefully to obtain the Tao. If they hadn't been discovered, perhaps in the end, they would have fought with their lives on the line, only to discover that their efforts were meaningless. Kill them. Seize the Tao. Damn bastards. That clan should be destroyed. The cultivators were enraged, and they roared as they charged into the canyon. His anger towards that clan was naturally the key reason, but there were also other things mixed within. For example, since that clan hid here secretly, they must have gained something. And now, these Taoist accumulations that were continuously gathering here were the best evidence. In other words, the ownership of the Tao was very likely here. Let's see who will be able to snatch it into his hands today. At a time like this, who was willing to fall behind? It was not an exaggeration to say that they were fighting to be the first. On the blood-colored altar, the cultivators of that clan opened their eyes, and their faces were filled with shock and anger. They did not receive the warning from the clan leader. But now, there was no time to find a reason. The many cultivators who were charging over with killing intent were already right in front of them. Protect 327. With a loud shout, 418 stood up and cut off his connection to the Tao. Around him, the other cultivators of that clan showed signs of struggle. But soon, they gritted their teeth and followed behind 418, cutting off their own chances of obtaining the Tao. 327 was indeed the most outstanding person among them. His perception and unsealing of the Tao was also the fastest among them. Now, he had already grasped almost half of the Tao, and as long as he surpassed half, he could be sure that this Tao would truly belong to him, and no one would be able to compete with him. And apart from 327, for 18, who had the fastest progress, had only unsealed a little more than a third of the Tao. If he had given up, there was no need for them to persist. But to say that they were not the least bit moved, resentful, or annoyed would be a lie. The Tao was before them. Furthermore, All of them had already come into contact with the existence of the great Tao. There was a certain chance that they would be able to obtain it for themselves. At the very least, he would be able to sense a bit more, and it would be greatly beneficial to his future cultivation. But now, everything was for naught. The numerous cultivators that were charging over naturally wished for nothing more than to tear his corpse into 10,000 pieces. 418 turned his head and looked at 327. Continue unsealing the great Tao. Leave these people outside to us. Remember, you are our last hope and the future of our race. Success or failure depends entirely on you. Don't let our sacrifices go to waste, and don't disappoint the patriarch. With that, he stomped his foot heavily. Come in. The crimson statue above Zhang Xian's head was pulled into his body. Pitter-patter, amidst the crackling sounds of bones and flesh, the 418's body directly increased in size, and its eyes turned blood red. A powerful, ruthless, and terrifying aura was released from his body. Kill! With a roar, 418 brazenly attacked, punching out and sending the cultivator at the very front flying. At this point, there was no point in explaining, and the cultivators outside would not give them a chance to stall for time. There was only slaughter. Either they could last until 327 finished unsealing the great Tao and controlled more than half of it, and then the outcome would be decided. Or everyone would die here. To the cultivators of that race, death was not something that was too frightening. Everyone knew that regardless of whether they were blessed or cursed, they were now nearly undying existences. Kill them all. We must buy time for 327. This is the hope of my race. It cannot be destroyed. With loud roars, the cultivators of that race did the same thing as 418. They pulled the stone statue above their heads into their bodies. And doing this was a checkmate. They would all die in the end. But this could be exchanged for a period of formidable combat strength. This in itself was one of the preparations that race had made ahead of time. It was all for the sake of dealing with a situation like the one before them. Bang, bang, bang. From the very start, the slaughter between the 23 people of that race and the numerous cultivators entered a white-hot state, intense to the extreme. No one was a fool. They could see that this race was desperately trying to protect their last person. 327. Right now, he was still unsealing the great Tao. The stone statue above his head was desperately swallowing up the surging Tao accumulations. Before, 24 people had swallowed them up, but now he was the only one left. The massive amount of Tao accumulations instantly submerged his figure. It was clear that 327 was the one who seized the great Tao from that race. And now, he had arrived at a critical moment. He could succeed at any moment. Once he couldn't stop it, once the great Tao of Mount Tianluo was confirmed, everything they did would become a joke. Everything they did before would become a joke. And there was even a chance that they wouldn't be able to leave here alive. That race that had two true sovereigns had enough courage to face the accusations of all sides. In a situation where they took the initiative to attack, it wasn't impossible for them to kill off all the invading cultivators. No, one had a path of retreat. Kill. Stop that race from obtaining the great Tao. Everyone, today our lives and deaths are in our hands. The great Tao is before us. Let's go all out. In this life, you and I will never be as close to the true, sovereign great Tao as we are today. The cultivators that rushed into the canyon went completely mad. No one thought of retreating because, as they said before, the great Tao was right in front of them. Anyone that retreated might lose the chance to seize the great Tao. There was no need to say anything like the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Because there were too many people, anyone that hid in the back would be giving up their chance. Moreover, in the current situation, there was no time left for them. If they couldn't stop that race, it would be difficult for them to leave Skyfall Mountain alive. At this time, no one noticed that Qin Yu and his group had already left the battlefield. Beneath the descent of the great Tao, Wanting to quietly and inconspicuously escape wasn't difficult at all. Qin Yu stood at the edge of the canyon. He looked at the battlefield from afar, his expression calm. Whether it was that race's cultivators desperately resisting to buy time for 327, or whether it was the all-out attacks of everyone that erupted with a formidable strength, none of this could be triggered. Qin Yu's heart didn't waver at all. This was because he was well aware that no matter how hard the two sides fought in the canyon, everything they did was useless. The ownership of the Great Tao had already been determined. They were nothing more than cannon fodder. Without a doubt, once the events of Skyfall Mountain came to an end and the survivors left, everything that race had done would be made public. At that time, that race would inevitably be questioned by all sides in the Central Wilderness. Their situation would surely be difficult. This was a situation that Qin Yu was happy to see. Neo Dao whispered, "Zhou Huan, do you have a grudge with that race?" She was a bit naive, but she wasn't stupid. Qin Yu gave her a thumbs up. He smiled and said, "Miss Neo is so smart." Neo Dao blushed red, her heart filled with sweetness. She liked Qin Yu's praise, even though she knew it was a bit of flowery words. Baiji humphed. She found Qin Yu's actions increasingly displeasing to the eye. Such a pure little girl had been tricked by him like this. How hateful! However, she thought of the madam. Since all of this was arranged by the madam, Baiji could remain silent about it. It was just that Baiji couldn't figure out what the madam wanted. Did she want to destroy the arrangements of that race and seize the Great Tao of Skyfall Mountain? Baiji thought she understood a little. Because that race had ruined the madam's plans, the current scene had occurred. Letting out a deep breath, Baiji sat down cross-legged and continued to unseal the Great Tao. If she could obtain the Great Tao of Skyfall Mountain, the madam would surely look at her in a different light. Qin Yu looked at Baiji and shook his head inwardly. He thought that this little girl didn't know the difference between life and death, and still wanted to crazily rush down a road of death. This was truly a matter that left one speechless. But he didn't plan to care. Everyone had their own fate, so let them do as they pleased. He took a deep breath and let it out. Qin Yu turned around. "Miss Li, since you've woken up, there is no need to continue pretending." The cultivators of the 13th floor were indeed extraordinary. Even after suffering such serious injuries, they were still able to wake up so quickly. Li Ruhua opened her eyes. She looked at Qin Yu. "Who are you?" The first question went straight to the heart of the matter. But it was clear that Qin Yu wasn't prepared to give her an answer right now. "I am your savior, so you owe me a great favor." Li Ruhua frowned. She thought for a moment and then slowly nodded. "I want to heal my injuries." Neo Dao looked at Qin Yu. He waved his hand, indicating that it was fine. Li Ruhua sat down cross-legged and closed her eyes. She restrained her aura as much as possible and began to unravel the Tao once more. Because this was her only chance to grasp the initiative once more. To place one's life in the hands of others and allow others to decide if they were good or evil wasn't Li Ruhua's style. The good news was that the people around her didn't seem to discover that she was unraveling the Great Tao, so they didn't try to stop her. And the bad news was that this 327 had already walked ahead of her. He was already at the point where he could obtain the Great Tao at any moment. Control of half of the Great Tao. Shua. Li Ruhua opened her eyes. She looked at Qin Yu. "You must do something and stop that clan." Qin Yu had a calm expression. "It's fine." Li Ruhua frowned. But in the current situation, her words held no weight at all. She could only close her eyes and focus on unraveling. The result of this was that her complexion became increasingly pale. Wei Han suddenly said, "You should listen to her. I can sense the Great Tao within Skyfall Mountain. That clan will soon succeed." He respected Qin Yu very much. Qin Yu waved his hand. "Wei Han, you must know that even though I said I would help you take revenge, Zheng Chu was killed in the end. There are some things that are already destined before they happen. For instance, the Great Tao within Skyfall Mountain. Who could have imagined that before it arrived, it was destined to belong to Qin Yu? Everyone on the mountain, as long as they could see this Great Tao, they would only help him obtain it as soon as possible. This was truly a matter that left everyone in despair, except for Chinyu. For some unknown reason, as Wei Han heard Chinyu say this, he suddenly felt that it was impossible for that clan to succeed. He didn't know the reason, but he was willing to believe it. He nodded and hugged Miaoyi even tighter. He no longer thought about the great Tao within Skyfall Mountain. Whoever wanted to fight for it could do so. Wei Han only hoped that he would be able to hold on to Miaoyi in his arms and never let go. Niu Daodu blushed a little. She couldn't help but glance at Chinyu. She discovered that he was looking at the battlefield with a straight face. She couldn't help but curl her lips. Now, it seemed that this person was a bit boring. The slaughter continued. It was normal for people to die. Most of them were cultivators that surrounded and attacked. This was because the clan that pulled the stone phantom into their bodies erupted with a formidable strength. But this didn't mean that they wouldn't die. Their absolute advantage in numbers was more than enough to make up for the disparity in strength. With a punch of 418 fists, a cultivator's head was smashed to smithereens. But he was also struck by his opponent's sword, and his abdomen was pierced through. He turned his head and looked in the direction of 327. He clenched his teeth and roared, rushing towards another cultivator. "Everyone, I'll be leaving first. I hope that we will meet again in the future." With a loud laugh, a cultivator from that clan blew himself up. Bang! Terrifying fluctuations of strength instantly reaped the lives of over a dozen people around him. But this only scared everyone back for a breath of time before they rushed forwards once more. "They can't hold on any longer. Kill them." With loud roars, everyone couldn't help but look at 327, their eyes blazing with heat. Great Tao! Great Tao! Beneath the domain master mansion, in a large space, more than half of the 24 stone statues had been shattered. The blood-red eggshell that was still intact was covered in cracks, as if it could shatter at any moment. The elder was alarmed and angry. He didn't know what had happened, but something unexpected had happened. In a short period of time, more than half of the stone statues had been destroyed. Patriarch! Patriarch! He didn't dare to wait any longer, even if he knew that the Patriarch was currently dealing with the true sovereign of the 13th Tower. Several breaths of time later, space shook. The Patriarch arrived and immediately discovered that the stone statues had been destroyed. Shua! He appeared, his face shaking. Impossible. Before this, he had already lost his sense of Skyfall Mountain. This meant that the Great Tao had chosen its master. After this, the Patriarch confirmed that the Great Tao did indeed belong to them. But now, within Skyfall Mountain, the cultivators of that clan were constantly dying. It was clear that there had been a deviation from their judgment. The reason was simple. If the Great Tao had truly fallen into the hands of that clan, then Skyfall Mountain would have become their home field. It didn't make sense that their clansmen would be killed. The elder was panic-stricken. "Patriarch, what do we do?" The Patriarch took a deep breath, suppressing the anger in his heart. He slowly said, "Wait." Besides this, there was no other way, unless he disregarded the consequences and forcefully broke into Skyfall Mountain. Not to mention that beast Xiongji, who was watching from the side like a tiger watching its prey. Niu Dingtian wouldn't allow him to brazenly attack now. So, besides waiting, there was nothing else he could do. Damn it, just what had happened within Skyfall Mountain. 327, 418 let out a roar. He widened his eyes and looked at her again. That's right, he was her. This was a secret that not many people in the clan knew of. "Goodbye," 418 whispered, a faint smile on his face. Bang! A heaven-shaking explosion. Nearly 100 people were sucked in. Those closest to him died on the spot. As for the others, they were also affected, their injuries varying in severity. However, he had already fought to this point. He was the last person remaining from that clan. There were no more obstacles in front of him. The surviving cultivators didn't even have time to feel the joy of surviving a bloody battle. They looked at 327, their eyes blazing hot, as if they wanted to burn her to ashes. Outside the canyon, Chinyu suddenly said, "She succeeded." Li Ruhua opened her eyes, a pained expression on her face. Just a little bit more, and she would have been able to seize back the great Tao. But just this little bit had been missed by a hair's breadth. She looked at Xinyu. She didn't understand why this person didn't stop her if he knew everything. But now, everything was over. Shua, on the sacrificial altar, the only survivor, 327, suddenly opened its eyes. Who? A gust of wind blew past, unraveling the bun on her head. Her long black hair cascaded down. Her robes fluttered in the wind. Her eyes swept around. Her face was pale, giving off a startling sense of beauty. The cultivators from all over that were desperately rushing over all subconsciously held their breaths. 327 looked up. Her voice was ice-cold. You all deserve to die. Bang! The power of the great Tao arrived. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.